Chapter 1493. An extremely handsome man stood up and said, "Allow me." Raphaela's eyes lit up. This man was very much to her taste, and she had already noticed him when he first appeared at the entrance of the sect. Xianyuan Cheng? The ancient dragon empress nodded. "Make your move. Teacher, ancient dragon empress, please enlighten me." Xianyuan Cheng drew his sword and charged toward the ancient dragon empress. Bai Ling strengthened the sect's protective formation expressionlessly and activated it to the maximum. Xianyuan Cheng moved like the wind, and his eyes shone with a peculiar light. The ancient dragon empress was beginning to look forward to what kind of opponent she was going to face. Xianyuan Cheng's sword blade glowed with an extremely agile white light as he leaped forward atop a yin-yang projection. Myriad spirit Tai Chi. Heaven detonation. The blade of his sword suddenly became scorching hot, and it quickly brightened. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. Destructive energy erupted forth and instantly engulfed the ancient dragon empress. Boundless energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, as if it were going to puncture the entire heavens. This was truly an earth-shattering event. The explosion was like the descent of the sun, and a mushroom cloud of laughter erupted. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, and the Phoenix unleashed their shields with all their might to protect the people behind them. All of the sect disciples and elders trembled uncontrollably as they stared at the mushroom cloud on the drill ground. Thank God the sect leader had prohibited spectators. Otherwise, they really would be traumatized by this. The energy from the explosion quickly dissipated on the drill ground. Raphaela spread open her 6 wings, which enshrouded her body like a ball. Her beautiful blue eyes blinked as she surveyed the situation outside with lingering fear. The ancient dragon empress, who was the closest to Xianyuan Cheng, was still standing on the spot. However, her face had been charred black, and her imperial robe was in tatters. She opened her mouth, from which white smoke escaped. The explosion had happened far too quickly, and she wasn't prepared for it. As for Xianyuan Cheng, she didn't even need to do anything before his consciousness was blurry from the explosion, and he lay on the ground riddled with wounds. The ancient dragon empress didn't know what to say anymore. What kind of King retard was this? Using self-detonation to fight to the death with me. Is there a need for that? What? Brother Cheng. And Lin rushed forward with a concerned expression and picked up Xianyuan Cheng before casting a healing spell technique on him. He looked at the charred man with a pained expression. Xianyuan Cheng recovered a little before turning to the ancient dragon empress with anticipation etched on his face. Ancient dragon empress, what kind of expression is that? Do you want me to praise you? The ancient dragon empress grumbled internally, but a magnanimous smile appeared on her face. Classmate Xianyuan Cheng's aptitude is outstanding, and his true intent to detonate the heavens has left me in awe. If you want to detonate the heavens, then detonate yourself first. Sacrificing yourself for the sake of detonating the heavenly mandate will greatly stimulate one's potential. If you cultivate diligently, your future will be limitless. She tossed out all of the best adjectives she could think of before turning to Xianyuan Cheng with a hint of resentment and concern in her eyes. Thank you, Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, for your comments and encouragement. Xianyuan Cheng's will to fight had been ignited with a determined expression. Ancient Dragon Empress. She really wanted to tell him not to tell anyone that he was her student. The Ancient Dragon Empress was a little uneasy. Who's next? To be honest, she was feeling really depressed right now, and she really wanted to turn around and leave right away. What kind of retards were coming up one after another? However, he was her student, and she had to finish the test, even with tears in her eyes. I'll do it. Sun Yulua raised his hand. The ancient dragon empress was then given a massive fright by Sun Yulua's heaven-shocking technique. Sun Yulua was responsible for fighting, while the Blue Dream Sword Spirit was responsible for acting like a ghost. The ancient dragon empress had been enraged, and she pinned him to the ground with her sword. After that, it was Xiao Hong's turn. Xiao Hong was going to destroy the heavens in the name of the sun. In her eyes, the sun was the most powerful, and nothing could compare with it. The sun came first, and then the heavens. The ancient dragon empress had only just been blasted by Xianyuan Cheng once before being blasted by the sun again. Immediately afterward, it was Su Qianyun and Yi Ling's turn. Kill, kill, kill. Kill everything that they wanted to kill, including the heavens. They appeared and disappeared like ghosts, and they were able to unleash the full extent of their assassination skills. The ancient dragon empress finally defeated Su Qianyun and Yi Ling, and her eyes were filled with exhaustion and astonishment. The mighty figures of the 4-9 immortal sect were simply far too terrifying. All of them were supremely talented freaks. Rafaela was also no longer as calm and collected as before. She knew just how powerful the ancient dragon empress was. In terms of heaven-crushing techniques, the ancient dragon empress was only inferior to Cyril and Chun Chun, but she had been forced into such a dire situation. It looked like she had to reevaluate the 4-9 immortal sect at this moment. Bai Ling stepped onto the stage with a warm smile on her face. Unbeknownst to them, nightmare mode had only just begun. Teacher, ancient dragon empress, please enlighten me. Bai Ling extended a graceful curtsy. Bring on. The ancient dragon empress didn't want to say anything else. Her desire to take advantage of this opportunity to vent her frustration for her teaching career had faded away significantly. All she wanted to do now was defeat these students as quickly as possible so that she could conclude this cultivation session. Let me warn you, teacher. You have to use your full power against me. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I might accidentally wound you. Bai Ling spoke in a gentle yet serious voice. You're afraid that you'll wound me? The ancient dragon empress nodded with a smile. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Who was she? She was the 4th heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, and she had once slain a representative of the heavenly Tao. Why would she be scared of a mere amateur? Even Xianyuan Cheng and the others had only managed to catch her off guard and inflict some minor injuries. Wounding her would be a joke. Bai Ling pulled out a device from her spatial magic tool and propped it up on the ground. It was pristine white, and it looked like a thick, long tube with the barrel of a cannon at its tip. This is what you've been working on for the past 10 days? The ancient dragon empress asked. She knew that Bai Ling hadn't practiced any spell techniques during the past 10 days. Instead, she had been listening intently to the ancient dragon empress lecture and taking notes. Then, she had written down some formulas and theories that even the ancient dragon empress couldn't understand. She had also asked many questions that the ancient dragon empress couldn't understand at that time. She was beginning to suspect that she was a fake teacher. That's right. I have to thank you for this, teacher. You gave me a lot of inspiration and allowed me to complete this device. If it weren't for the limitations of time, materials, and energy, it could be even more powerful. Be careful. Bai Ling pressed a hand against the long tube, and energy quickly converged toward it. The ancient dragon empress hair stood on end as a boundless sense of danger engulfed her entire body. Heaven-crushing armor, heaven-crushing shield, heaven-crushing body enhancement technique. In that instant, the ancient dragon empress frantically fortified her defenses. It was also at this moment that the cannon exploded. A silvery white pillar of light pierced through the earth, pulverizing space and annihilating all things. The ancient dragon empress heaven-crushing shield, heaven-crushing armor, and heaven-crushing body enhancement technique were shattered one after another before puncturing her body. In the end, even the Tao integration stage protective formation behind her was punctured. The power of heaven-crushing pierced through the entire sect and extended into infinity and beyond. Dazzling mushroom clouds rose up from the mountain ranges thousands of kilometers away as energy soared into the heavens. How could this be? The ancient dragon empress' eyes widened with incredulity as she stared at the gaping hole in her waist. She couldn't defend herself against Bai Ling's heaven-crushing technique. The ancient dragon empress was completely dumbstruck. Rafaela's expression had also shifted to one of astonishment. Why? Master is the 4th heavenly disciple, the pillar of the heaven-crushing sect. How could she not defend herself? A faint smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. Because when it comes to heaven-crushing techniques, the purple star is the true patriarch. Chapter 1494. Purple Star. The ancient dragon empress murmured. She finally understood. This woman had most likely inherited the core secrets of the purple star. In other words, was she trying to strut around in front of patriarch heaven-crushing? PFFF. The ancient dragon empress threw up another mouthful of blood. Master! Rafaela couldn't sit still any longer, and she immediately flashed toward the ancient dragon empress before unleashing a healing technique and a heart recovery technique. I've only just put this device into use, so it seems to be a little too powerful. Bai Ling silently put away the cannon with an apologetic expression. The ancient dragon empress drew a sharp intake of breath. Just a little too powerful? She would believe it if you said it could crush the heavens. Not only were the ancient dragon empress and Rafaela astonished, but even Su Qianyun, Xianyuan Cheng, and the others were trembling uncontrollably. Big Sister Bai is still as scary as ever, Su Qianyun said in a mellow voice. The more gentle and amiable a woman is, the more terrifying she is when she's angry. Woof. Bai spoke with a serious expression, and Lin stepped forward with an enraged expression. Big Sister Bai, you blew up my sect as well. You have to pay for it. Bai Ling rolled her eyes. All right, my cannon is aimed at an area with no people or buildings. At most, I'll repair the wall for you. The ancient dragon empress almost threw up another mouthful of blood upon hearing this. So, she was trying to avoid her vitals just to avoid the vitals of her sect? Bai Ling silently put away the cannon before turning to the ancient dragon empress with anticipation on her face. The ancient dragon empress' lips twitched slightly. You're going to go back after flexing. I really don't have the face to criticize you. She felt like she was about to lose all of her reputation as a teacher. Ahem, big student Bai Ling, your heaven-crushing aptitude is already very high, so I don't have anything else to teach you. I hope you can continue to strive for greater heights. Everyone was shocked to hear this. What she was implying was that Bai Ling had already graduated from her tutelage, and Lin swallowed upon hearing this. As expected, Big Sister Bai was super fierce. Thank you for your guidance, Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress. Bai Ling bowed in an extremely graceful manner before retreating to the back. The Ancient Dragon Empress had helped her immensely, and the heaven-crushing sect had also made some critical improvements to the original Purple Star technology. She had benefited immensely from this. The ancient dragon empress injuries were finally healed by Rafaela, and she looked at the remaining students with an indescribable sense of panic in her heart. She forced herself to calm down as she consoled herself. Bai Ling's identity was special, which was why she was so terrifying. No matter what, the other students would be able to handle her. She was a teacher, the fourth heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. How could he retreat in such a place? If others were to find out that he had been scolded by a student he had only taught for 10 days to the point where he didn't even dare to continue testing his abilities, wouldn't he be laughed to death? Who's next? The ancient dragon empress asked. Let me do it. A clear and melodious voice rang out. The ancient dragon empress looked up to discover an extremely beautiful fairy in a green dress flying toward her. She looked so cute, so she shouldn't be scary. The ancient dragon empress' heart eased slightly. She knew that Tina was an extremely rare member of the fairy tribe, but that didn't mean that she was extremely proficient in the Tao of crushing the heavens. Fairies were a race that loved nature and life. It would be more accurate to say that they obeyed the heavens and had nothing to do with crushing the heavens. Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, I'm up. Tina smiled sweetly. Come on. The Ancient Dragon Empress took a deep breath. Rafaela retreated to the edge of the drill ground. For some reason, she felt an indescribable sense of heartache at the sight of the Ancient Dragon Empress. Tina stood in midair and closed her eyes. She put her hands together, and her semi-transparent golden wings fluttered lightly as divine light flowed over their surfaces. Whoosh, golden lines began to appear on her intricate forehead, forming a divine symbol. Tina's aura suddenly became ethereal and lofty. Even Lin was beginning to find her unfathomable. It was as if she didn't exist in this world, or as if she had transcended to another dimension. The ancient dragon empress' eyes widened as a sense of foreboding welled up in her heart. Right at this moment, Tina's palms slowly parted to reveal a chaotic, twisted ball. This ball had no fixed shape. It was like an abyssal black hole, but it was also as dazzling as the sun. Light and darkness intertwined, imbuing it with the power of both destruction and rebirth. Thus, it gradually split apart before progressing toward destruction. What the hell is this? The ancient dragon empress' eyelids twitched as a chill ran down her spine. She discovered that not only was Bai Ling giving her a feeling of incomprehension, but even the spell technique unleashed by this fairy was beyond her imagination. This was a type of power that she had never encountered before. Ever since teacher taught me the heaven-crushing technique, I've been constantly modifying this technique in the divine mirror world. After all, there is nothing I can't do in that world. An extremely adorable and enticing smile appeared on Tina's face, as if she were a little demonic girl looking for excitement. She slowly pushed the ball of light toward the ancient dragon empress. I'm the heavens. It seems like I'm quite good at researching how to kill myself. Go, chaotic heaven-crushing ball. Tina's voice was like a decree from the heavens. The chaotic ball of light flew toward the ancient dragon empress. A boundless chill engulfed the ancient dragon empress' entire body. The ancient dragon empress unleashed her most powerful heaven-crushing technique almost without any hesitation. Heaven-crushing technique, heavenly Tao, absolute reincarnation. The ancient dragon empress let loose an almighty roar as she unleashed all of her power. She gripped the air with one palm facing the sky and the other facing the earth, and between them was the extreme mystic heaven and earth. Whoosh, an absolute defensive barrier that was isolated from the samsara of heaven and earth formed around her. The ancient dragon empress had fallen into a peculiar space. From a perspective of Lin and the others, the space where the ancient dragon empress was situated seemed to have lost all color and become black and white. This was the color of the beginning of the universe. Nothing was black, something was white, and black and white were the most primordial colors. Tina's chaotic heaven-crushing ball crashed into the ancient dragon empress' heavenly Tao absolute reincarnation. There was no violent clash or explosion. Instead, the ball of light continued to erode the defensive barrier, but an expression of shock and horror appeared on the ancient dragon empress' face. It was as if once the ball of light completely invaded her space, it would spell the end of everything. The ancient dragon empress roared as she frantically unleashed all of her power. Master, this was the first time Rafaela had seen the ancient dragon empress fight with all her might, and she was tempted to rush over to help. Don't come any closer. It's dangerous. The ancient dragon empress yelled as she raised her heaven-crushing true intent to the very maximum. It was as if the entire dragon tribe was standing behind her, giving her power over and over again. Even so, the ball of light was still slowly seeping into her heaven-crushing technique. Even though it was getting smaller and smaller, it was still as dangerous as ever. The heavenly Tao absolute reincarnation was definitely not going to stop this chaotic heaven-crushing ball of light. The ancient dragon empress was still holding on with all her might. This was a battle of willpower. 1 minute later, the ball of light was finally ground into nothingness by the heavenly Tao spell technique. My spell technique has been blocked. Tina wiped the sweat from her forehead with a disappointed expression. She was a little disappointed that she wasn't able to do anything for Giant Lin. Thump! The ancient dragon empress collapsed to the ground and panted heavily with tears streaming down her face. I'm done. I'm done. It's too terrifying. Chapter 1495. Master, Rafaela unleashed a healing technique and a heart-saving technique on the ancient dragon empress with a pained expression. The ancient dragon empress really didn't want to admit defeat, but she was really starting to panic. Tina stuck out her little tongue, before flying toward the ancient dragon empress with concern. "Teacher, are you all right?" Being cared for by a student, the ancient dragon empress forced a smile onto her face and shook her head. "I'm fine. I'm just a little tired. I want to rest now." "Oh, that's true. You fought so many battles in a row, so you have to take care of yourself. Don't collapse from exhaustion." Tina flew over to the ancient dragon empress, who was lying on the ground, and she held onto the ancient dragon empress' slender fingers with an innocent expression. "Ancient dragon empress, don't you have any idea who the culprit is that almost caused my body to collapse from exhaustion?" She was feeling a little fearful after that. If she hadn't defended herself against the fairy's attack with all her might, who knew what would have happened next? She stared at the fairy with shock and confusion on her face. "Didn't you say that you were the heavens in the divine mirror world? Are you a god of creation?" Tina chuckled as she recalled Lynn's instructions, and she feigned a confused expression as she said, "Did I say something like that? Why don't I remember? You must have heard wrong." "Ancient dragon empress, can you please come up with a more convincing lie?" Since the fairy didn't want to answer, she naturally wasn't going to pry any further. However, the 4-9 Immortal sect was becoming more and more mysterious and powerful in her heart. As expected, only a sect leader as frivolous as Lynn could lead such a bunch of supremely talented prodigies. Even the ancient dragon empress had come to this conclusion, and her servant, Raphaela, was even more astonished. Raphaela knew that the ancient dragon empress had just unleashed the most powerful spell techniques of the heaven-crushing lineage. But even so, she had only just barely managed to block one of her opponent's attacks. "Student Tina, your heaven-crushing aptitude is extremely freakish. If you continue to cultivate like this, you'll definitely see a whole new level of progress in the path of heaven-crushing. I have nothing more to teach you." The ancient dragon empress had not forgotten her criticism and began to provide an objective evaluation. Another student who had successfully completed his apprenticeship. He was the 4th heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, yet 2 of his students had already graduated after just 10 days of teaching. He didn't know whether he should be happy or sad. "Thank you for your guidance, Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress." Tina bowed with elation. The ancient dragon empress stood up again. Her features were a little pale, and she was clearly extremely exhausted. She looked at the students not far away with a complicated expression. She had thought that this was going to be a simple test that would allow the students to see just how high the heavens were and how deep the earth was. This was supposed to be the time for the ancient dragon empress to rise to power. But how did she end up like this? Apart from the first contestant, Yao Mingxi, whose aptitude was mediocre, the rest of the contestants were all extremely talented. This didn't make sense at all. The ancient dragon empress was very depressed, but unbeknownst to her, Yao Mingxi was even more depressed. It was quite normal for the ancient dragon empress to criticize him for his mediocre aptitude. 9 out of 10 mighty figures were like that, and he heaved a sigh of relief as a result. And then, what the F***CK, all the others after that had excellent or top-notch aptitudes. He was the only one with mediocre aptitude. Was there a problem somewhere? This was very heartbreaking. Yao Mingxi was a return to Void Stage, sword immortal mighty figure, but he was about to crawl into a hole in the ground. He was the sect leader, and Lin was feeling a little elated at this moment. He was hoping that the powerful beings of the sect could set a good example and perform well in front of Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress. Then, Bai Ling and Tina had done so well. The Ancient Dragon Empress would probably be very pleased now, right? He turned toward the Ancient Dragon Empress, and a sense of respect welled up in his heart at the sight of her slightly haggard features. "Thank you for your hard work, Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress." The Ancient Dragon Empress was given a fright, and she turned toward Lin. "Why are you suddenly bringing this up?" "Nothing. I just felt like you've worked hard, so I couldn't help but ask." And Lin looked at the Ancient Dragon Empress. Why was she reacting so strongly? Su Xiaolan made her way over with the phoenix. "Teacher Ancient Dragon Empress, about Little Huang and my heaven-crushing techniques mastery. We'll talk about it another day." The Ancient Dragon Empress shuddered with excitement. Everyone, Tina and Bai Ling, were already so terrifying even though they weren't at the Dao integration stage. But this divine Phoenix Maiden and Phoenix were Dao integration stage super mighty figures. They were super bosses. Wouldn't their combined powers be terrifying? The ancient Dragon Empress had completely forgotten that she was also a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Oh, Su Xiaolan seemed to be a little dejected, and the excitement in her eyes gradually faded. However, she still asked with a hint of reluctance, "When will it begin?" The ancient Dragon Empress faltered momentarily before a resolute expression appeared on her face. In 3 days, she would be able to resurrect with full health in 3 days. Her life and death would all be up to fate then. Wait, why am I getting this feeling? The ancient Dragon Empress suddenly came to a realization. She was the 4th heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, so how could she show weakness in front of her students? With this in mind, she was filled with shame and remorse, and her pride and battle intent rose again. She wasn't even afraid of the heavens, so why would she be afraid of a bird and a woman? 2 days, the ancient Dragon Empress replied with a solemn expression. Everyone faltered upon hearing this. They didn't know what the ancient Dragon Empress was talking about. I said the test for Su Xiaolan and the Phoenix's heaven-crushing aptitude will begin in 2 days. The ancient Dragon Empress spoke with a resolute expression. Unlin, Su Xiaolan, has teacher ancient Dragon Empress been traumatized by something? Isn't it just a test 1 day in advance? Why is she acting like this is a big deal? Only Raffaella knew that the ancient Dragon Empress had truly been traumatized. The ancient Dragon Empress was going to rest, and all of the pavilion lords and elders of the 4-9 immortal sect bowed in unison. Thank you for your hard work, teacher ancient Dragon Empress. Tears welled up in the ancient Dragon Empress' eyes upon hearing her classmates' sincere words, and she fought back her tears. She wasn't moved by her classmates' politeness. Instead, she was shedding tears for her own bitter teaching experience. She had come to the 4-9 immortal sect in high spirits, only to be scared witless by her students' heaven-crushing techniques. This was something that she had never even dared to imagine, but it was happening right before her eyes. The ancient Dragon Empress' breathing accelerated at the thought of this. The heaven-crushing sect had been completely humiliated by her. Hurry, Raffaella, use another life-saving spell technique. The ancient Dragon Empress' breathing accelerated. Yes, Master, Raffaella replied with a pained expression. And Lin couldn't help but sigh with emotion as he looked at the 2 women walking away. What a dutiful teacher. Chapter 1496. As long as one could memorize the most important mantras for the heaven-crushing techniques, then it would be up to one's aptitude and perseverance. Hence, after the ancient Dragon Empress left, all of the 4-9 immortal sect powerful beings continued to practice diligently. And Lin made his way over to Su Xiaolan with a curious expression. What heaven-crushing techniques are you cultivating? Su Xiaolan turned to look at Lin with a mischievous smile on her face. It's related to you, but I'm not telling you. This was a little annoying, and Lin was very touched by her teasing, and he latched onto Su Xiaolan's arm again. However, Su Xiaolan refused to tell him. He had no choice but to turn to the Phoenix in the distance. Little Huang, what is your heaven-crushing techniques? The Phoenix glanced at Lin with a haughty expression. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Lin, all right, you didn't understand. He gave up. He would just wait for the test in 2 days. In any case, Su Xiaolan would be able to show him her spell techniques when the time came. In this test, everyone had revealed something. And Lin was like a curious baby, interviewing everyone. Big Brother Chung, how did you go from being an explosive genius to a self-destructing soldier? And Lin asked with a curious expression. Xin Yuan Chung didn't want to say anything, so he tossed a bomb at Lin. Boom! And Lin was blasted back several dozen meters. He tumbled to the ground and was just in time to see Su Qinyun's dress. However, he was only able to see Su Qinyun's dress as she was wearing a long dress. And Lin looked up at her smooth, well-proportioned calves with a curious expression. Su Qinyun, Su Qianyun, you're such a beautiful and gentle girl. How did you become an emotionless killer? Huh, really? Su Qianyun faltered momentarily before blinking her dreamy blue eyes adorably. She said in a mellow voice, "No, I have feelings." And Lin nodded upon hearing this. Thankfully, Su Qianyun didn't admit to it. Su Qianyun tapped her chin with a faint smile. It's just that some pieces of trash don't deserve to exist in this world, so they have to be destroyed. Gasp. And Lin drew a sharp intake of breath as a chill ran down his spine. He felt like he shouldn't bully Su Qianyun in the future. The more innocent a girl was, the scarier to him. He didn't know where she learned her sickly look from. Junior student Yao Mingxi, what are your thoughts on the evaluation that you have the most ordinary aptitude out of all of us? And Lin started to change the subject of the interview. Yao Mingxi, who was already disappointed, almost vomited blood when he heard this. Why did his idol purposely come to stab him in the back? No, I can't let my idol look down on me, he said with a serious expression. I'm not the worst out of everyone here. I'm not the only one who was evaluated as having an ordinary aptitude. Dabai is the same. Dabai shuddered. Are you trying to hurt each other? Woof. And Lin shook his head and said, Dabai is a dog, not a human. You have the worst aptitude out of everyone. Dabai, Yao Mingxi instantly broke down. Sob, sob, sob. This sect is full of monsters. How can a normal person like me live? What else can I do, huh? Looking at his junior, who was gradually breaking down, and Lin was too embarrassed to continue hurting him. He walked to the other side, where a table had been moved out. The woman in white was wearing holographic glasses and was writing and drawing on the table. Big Sister Bai, your heaven-crushing cannon was so powerful. Did the purple star use that cannon to blast a hole in the sky? And Lin asked in a quiet voice. Bai Ling adjusted her glasses with a mysterious smile on her face. That's the worst time the purple star has ever been slandered. Can this thing compare to the purple star's ultimate weapon? And Lin scratched his head. Then can you build an ultimate weapon? Bai Ling shrugged. Not very likely. I don't have any equipment, resources, or manpower. You have to realize that the Purple Star Tribe was only able to use the ultimate weapon after mobilizing all of their resources. How am I supposed to do that on my own? And Lin looked deeply into Bai Ling's eyes. You didn't completely deny it. You used the word, not very likely, which means that you have the most important technology and method, right? Bai Ling pursed her lips and turned toward the northeast. She didn't deny this and nodded. And Lin knew that this was a good opportunity to have a heart-to-heart talk with Bai Ling. So he pulled over a small stool and shamelessly sat down beside Bai Ling, just like how they would sit next to each other in school. He turned to look at Bai Ling's beautiful profile and asked curiously, Big Sister Bai, is it time for you to tell me your true identity? Bai Ling looked into the distance with a smile. True identity? Didn't you already know that? I'm the mastermind of the 88th Purple Star Research Institute. In the past, I would have believed you. And Lin smiled and said, but now that I think about it, the entire Purple Star Tribe is dead, and you're the only one left alive. That's definitely not a coincidence. The more I come into contact with it, the more I understand just how terrifying the Heavenly Tao is. The punishment of the Heavenly Tao involves karma and encompasses the entire universe. How could an ordinary research institute mastermind like you possibly avoid it? You're not just a fish that escaped the net. There's a very good chance that you're an extremely important person that the entire Purple Star civilization is trying to protect. Now that I've seen you create the heaven-crushing cannon that can break through the ancient Dragon Empress' heaven-crushing true intent, I'm even more convinced of this. Bai Ling glanced at Lin with a faint smile. What's there to be proud of about breaking through the ancient Dragon Empress defenses? Your little fairy can do it as well. And Lin shook his head. The ancient Dragon Empress is no small fry. She is the fourth heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect and one of the most powerful heaven-crushing techniques. You were able to break through her defenses with heaven-crushing power, which means that you've already mastered the core heaven-crushing technology. Furthermore, you said that you've even mastered the technology for the Purple Star's ultimate weapon. That's a little terrifying. You're basically the most important part of the Purple Star civilization. What was the most important thing for a technological civilization? It wasn't resources, it wasn't manpower, and it definitely wasn't the environment. It was technology. It was the knowledge that led directly to the essence of the world. Bai Ling had all of the most important things in the Purple Star civilization. No matter how insensitive Lin was, he knew that Bai Ling was no ordinary person. No, she was extremely extraordinary. After a moment of silence, the woman beside Lin heaved a light sigh of relief. She turned her head to the side, and a hint of seriousness appeared on her beautiful features. You want to know? Lin nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Bai Ling spoke in a soft voice. So be it. You've given me so much warmth and trust in me during these past few years. You've never asked me what I'm doing here, so I don't want to hide anything from you. I'm actually not a Purple Star citizen. Chapter 1497. Lin had always thought that Bai Ling was the most important person in the Purple Star civilization. Now, Bai Ling's words had completely shattered his suspicions. After a brief moment of shock, Lin became even more curious about Bai Ling. You're not even a Purple Star citizen. Then who are you? Bai Ling smiled. You're right about one thing. I am a life form that the entire Purple Star civilization is trying to protect. My brain capacity is hundreds of millions of times that of a normal, highly intelligent being, and I possess all of the knowledge of the Purple Star civilization. I am the seed of the entire civilization. It's a pity that in order to protect myself, a lot of my knowledge is still sealed away and needs to be slowly unlocked. I also need time to get used to it, and Lin was a little entranced. This big sister Bai really did have a powerful background. The backlash from the Heavenly Tao did indeed completely annihilate the Violet Star tribe. They were completely wiped out. If the heavens wanted to kill, why would they leave anyone alive? However, I'm not a Purple Star citizen. I'm a new human created by the Purple Star civilization. I'm the most perfect human being that a civilization can achieve, Bai Ling continued. And Lin shot a glance at Bai Ling with incredulity. You're the most perfect human being? You're a demon who's gentle on the surface, but you're actually extremely evil on the inside. And you're the most perfect human being. Hee hee. A cold chuckle sounded. All of a sudden, he felt a cold sensation on his neck. A particle cutter had appeared on his neck. Bai Ling narrowed her eyes with a smile. I'll give you another chance to rephrase your sentence. And Lin's body shuddered. Bai Ling's smile was very beautiful, but he felt like he had been targeted by the Grim Reaper. If he failed to rephrase his sentence, he could guarantee that the thread would fall mercilessly. He immediately corrected himself. Big Sister Bai is so gentle, beautiful, generous, considerate, and intelligent. No matter if it's her appearance or personality, there's not a single flaw to be found. How could she not be the most perfect human? In my eyes, you're the most perfect human being. And Lin's voice was filled with conviction. Bai Ling finally put down the thread in her hand upon hearing this, before looking at him with a smile. Please continue. And Lin swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said weakly, women were unreasonable when they were angry. If he didn't lower his head now, a fight would be inevitable. For the harmony of the sect, for the continuous development of the sect leader, and for the survival of the human race, Lin could only choose to swallow the humiliation, grovel, and endure hardships. I'm an artificial life form. I have no bloodline or genetic connection with the Purple Planet, so I was able to escape the Heavenly Tao's backlash. I have all the characteristics that a life should have. Not only do I have a physical body, but I also have a soul and a unique Tao. I'm actually the same as all of you. Bai Ling turned to Lin and continued. If you really want to point out a difference, then it's just that she's a little smarter, a little nicer, a little prettier, and a little more talented. And Lin's face couldn't help but twitch. Was she so mischievous? You're right. He thought for a moment, then nodded and praised. On the surface, he was smiling, but in his heart, he was cursing. I'm the spark of the Purple Star civilization, but at the same time, I also have my own mission. Mission? To revive the Purple Star civilization? And Lin asked, all of the Purple Star civilization has perished. I'm just a fake Purple Star civilization. How am I supposed to revive it? A resigned smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. The continuation of a civilization was not just the continuation of knowledge and spirit. The continuation of bloodlines was also an indispensable part of it. If the bloodline had been severed, then it really couldn't be considered a revival. What I want to do is to make up for the mistake that the Purple Star civilization made. Bai Ling raised her head and looked up into the sky as she murmured, "I want to mend the heavens." And Lin almost fell off his chair in fright. "Huh? What did you say?" I said, "I, Bai Ling, want to mend the heavens." Bai Ling enunciated each and every word in a clear voice, and Lin knew that he had not misheard her. But he still found it a little difficult to believe that Bai Ling would choose to mend the heavens in a situation where everyone was bent on destroying the heavens. My divine Tao is not the Tao of space, nor is it the Tao of information calculation. Instead, it is the Tao of a civilization. The Purple Star civilization bestowed its spark upon me, and it is continuing on in a special way. My Tao is known as the Purple Star Tao. I can sense the remorse of all the living beings of the Purple Star civilization in their final moments, crying like helpless and despairing children. But in the end, there's no turning back. I can hear their final wish, which is to make up for their mistakes. Children who have made mistakes always want to be forgiven by their adults. Children who have accidentally stabbed their adults are filled with horror and remorse. They kneel to the ground and clutch at their wounds, hoping that their parents will be appeased in their final moments. A smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. How pitiful and foolish. This was the first time that Lin had heard Bai Ling criticize her Purple Star civilization in such a straightforward manner. Was this really the spark of the Purple Star civilization? So you're planning to join the Heaven-Mending sect? Lin was a little concerned. Bai Ling shook her head decisively. No need, I'll do my own research. During these past few years, I've actually researched many things and made many preparations. She looked at Lin with a hesitant expression. Lin heaved a sigh of relief. All right, I'll support you as long as you can save the human race. A smile blossomed on Bai Ling's face. Yes, sect leader. There was one thing that she didn't say. It was Lin's performance in the Dark Research Institute 100 years ago that gave her the courage to take this step. After that, Lin didn't pry any further. He had already learned Bai Ling's true identity, as well as her objective, so everything else wasn't important. For example, if he were to ask her how to mend the heavens, she would just toss out a bunch of theories, and then Lin would listen to her like an idiot. There was no point in doing that. Thus, Big Sister Bai's interview came to an end, and Lin began to interview his little fairy. Little Na, how did you come up with such a powerful, heaven-crushing true intent? You didn't really experiment on yourself in the divine mirror world, did you? And Lin asked with a curious expression. A smug expression appeared on Tina's face. That's right. I'm the heavens in the divine mirror world, and I used my omnipotent abilities in the divine mirror world to research how to crush the heavens and kill myself. I have to admit, I really am a prodigy. I really did kill myself. And Lin almost threw up a mouthful of blood. Prodigy my *S. What's there to be proud of? Are you all right now? I'm fine. I've been resurrected in the divine mirror world. I've been resurrected with full health. Tina smiled in consolation. And Lin still felt like this little fairy's train of thought was a little too wild, and he tried to help her establish the correct outlook on life, values, and cultivation. Time flew by. 2 days flew by very quickly. Finally, the battle between Su Xiaolan and the ancient Dragon Empress commenced. Chapter 1498. After 2 days of recuperation, the ancient Dragon Empress had made a perfect recovery, regardless of whether it was her physical injuries or the damage to her confidence. She was now an awe-inspiring teacher, the high and mighty fourth heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. She was going to show her students that their teacher was still their teacher. Her authority was going to be restored today. All of the 4-9 immortal sect returned to Void Stage mighty figures had already gathered on the drill ground. And Lin also held Su Xiaolan's little hand as he offered words of encouragement. Don't be too nervous. Just do your best. In my heart, you're the best. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but roll her eyes. Why do you look like I'm about to take a test? Isn't this just a chance to demonstrate your progress in learning the heaven-crushing techniques? This is an exam. The ancient dragon empress is the examiner, so you have to work hard and leave a deep impression on her. And Lin spoke with a solemn expression. The ancient dragon empress' eyelids twitched upon hearing this. However, her Tao heart was resolute, and she quickly repressed her feelings of unease as she looked at Su Xiaolan with a confident expression. Su Xiaolan and the phoenix had appeared at the same time. Everyone knew that the phoenix would always participate in battles between the divine phoenix maiden, so the ancient dragon empress was not surprised. After all, she had told the students that they could team up to fight her if they were scared. However, the ancient dragon empress still had a lot of complaints in her heart. Your AF * King Dao integration stage, super mighty figure. How can you not be scared? 2 Dao integration stage, super mighty figures bullying a single teacher. Teacher, ancient dragon empress, please enlighten me. Su Xiaolan extended a respectful salute. Chirp, the phoenix chimed in. The ancient dragon empress also extended a respectful salute before looking at the two of them with a solemn expression. She had learned that the 4-9 Immortal Sex curriculum was nightmare difficulty, but she wasn't one to back down easily. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to bear the title of heaven-crushing sect heavenly disciple. Come. The ancient dragon empress spoke with a frosty aura. Right at this moment, Tina's voice transmission talisman suddenly lit up. She picked up the voice transmission talisman, upon which an urgent male voice sounded. Bad news, goddess. A large-scale battle has erupted in the gem state. The heavenly human tribe, the blood tribe, and the void spirit tribe have a combined army of 30 million. Xiaoguang City has already fallen, and over half of the kingdom of the 9 states united army has perished. The 4 returned to void stage generals of the realm pavilion, Tian Shi, Long Kui, Nan Linhua, and Zhong Qinggu, as well as the return of void stage General Felisa of the blood pavilion, as well as the 6 other return to void stage mighty figures of the kingdom of the 9 states, have all perished in battle. I'm running toward Nanchao City right now, and they're chasing me. Before he could finish his words, a blood-curdling scream sounded. The voice-transmitting talisman was cut off. The scene was silent. The ancient dragon empress, Su Xiaolan, and the phoenix also stopped their confrontation and turned toward Tina. What happened to the heavenly human tribe on the southern front? They actually mobilized the entire army? Lu Qianhuan recalled that the heavenly human tribe united army on the southern front had always been advancing slowly and steadily. It was extremely rare to see such a massive army of tens of millions being deployed. Everyone fell silent as grave expressions appeared on their faces. Even though no Dao integration stage super mighty figures had perished, over half of the united army had perished, including 11 return to void stage mighty figures. This was already an extremely heavy blow to the human army. Tina took a glance at Lin before standing up. Jine and Lin, I'm going to set off now. The Realm Pavilion is responsible for the southern front, so I can't go without them. Cassidy and Merlin also stepped forward. The Blood Pavilion and Realm Pavilion were both responsible for guarding the southern front, so they had to provide reinforcements. Don't be in such a hurry, and Lin suddenly said. There was a hint of eagerness in his eyes as he met everyone's confused gazes. Why don't we do something big? Do something big? How? Lu Qianhuan's purple eyes were also a little excited. Don't we have so many people here? And Lin smiled. Let's go together and wipe out the heavenly human tribe united army on the southern front. Gasp. Everyone sucked in a mouthful of cold air when they heard this. Even the ancient dragon empress and Rafaela were a little dumbstruck, as if they had misheard. Lin, what are you talking about? Tina murmured. Do you know how terrifying the heavenly human tribe united army on the southern front is? Setting aside the number of troops, just the most powerful forces we've seen so far include hundreds of soul-piercing stage generals, a dozen or so Heaven Pioneer stage great generals, and even a legendary divine heaven stage and a representative of the heavenly Tao. Xin Yuan Cheng spoke in an urgent voice. Don't do anything rash. I'm not rash. And Lin looked around at everyone. Sometimes the balance of a war can be completely reversed at a critical juncture, and my return is the catalyst for that. Everyone's hearts stirred upon hearing this. However, Su Xiaolin immediately poured a bucket of cold water on everyone's hopes. All of us are being monitored by the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. If we appear on any of the other battlefields, their strategy will change accordingly. The Northern Front is extremely important. If Little Huang and I appear on the Southern Front, the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Northern Front will definitely seize this opportunity to launch a counterattack, and the Northern Front could very well collapse. In other words, Little Huang and I cannot be absent from the Northern Front. At this point, the war had developed into a situation where the powerful beings on both sides were mutually restricting one another. If a change were to occur, it would be very easy for the situation to change as a whole. If Little Lan and Little Huang can't get away, then even if we join in with Enlin, we'll only be able to make the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army suffer a minor setback at most. I don't think we'll be able to wipe out the entire Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Southern Front. Su Qianyun was clearly not very confident either. No one had thought about gathering their forces to break through one of the battlefields first. However, the reality was that the resistance they were facing was far more powerful than they had imagined. Who said I'm the only one joining in? And Lin smiled and said, "The Celestial Arch, the Great Empress, Shangwan Yi, and Meng Ji have all returned with me. We're all waiting to give them a surprise." Sure enough, everyone's eyes lit up upon hearing this. That's right. I almost forgot about them. The Celestial Arch, the most powerful being in the Kingdom of the Nine States, has reappeared. What will that be like? Xin Yuan Cheng was extremely excited. There's also the Great Empress of the Snow Maidens. She's also a very powerful Dao integration stage super mighty figure. With Meng Ji and Shangwan Yi, we'll be able to increase our combat prowess significantly. Su Xiaolan nodded in agreement. Even if we can't wipe out the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Southern Front, we'll at least be able to inflict some serious damage on them. Merlin was also very excited as flames burned in his eyes. I said we're going to wipe out the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Southern Front, so I'll definitely do it. And Lin wore an extremely serious expression as he turned to Su Xiaolan and the Phoenix. You two come with me. That way, we'll have more synergy. I'll arrange for the Great Empress, Meng Ji, and Shangwan Yi to take over your defensive duties. That way, we'll be able to give the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Northern Front a surprise. Su Xiaolan's eyes lit up. That's a good idea. When Su Xiaolan had descended from the heavens and entered the Southern Front, the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Northern Front had thought that the Northern Front of the Kingdom of the Nine States was undefended, so they wanted to take advantage of this opening. However, a few extremely powerful Snow Maidens had suddenly appeared at this moment, and they would definitely be able to achieve a miraculous result on the battlefield. With this in mind, the flames of battle ignited in everyone's hearts. They were clearly looking forward to the upcoming battles. However, Enlin showed no signs of stopping. He turned to the ancient Dragon Empress and Rafaela with an extremely sincere and benevolent smile on his face. Chapter 1499. The ancient Dragon Empress and Rafaela could sense Enlin's scorching gaze. They seemed to have figured out what Enlin was trying to do. Teacher, ancient Dragon Empress, Rafaela, are you not going to participate in such an earth-shattering event? Enlin extended an invitation with a smile. The ancient Dragon Empress shook her head. I'm afraid not. Rafaela and I are only responsible for teaching, and we also have to act as the trump cards of the heaven-crushing sect to deter the Heavenly Human Tribe. It's not the right time to go. Their current status was similar to that of the Heavenly Human Tribe's divine heaven stage powerful beings and heavenly god clones. Once they did, heaven and earth would crumble, and this was a battle that could decide the course of the entire war. As such, both sides were extremely cautious. Enlin was naturally aware of this. For example, Cyril of the Heaven-Crushing Sect and Yuhua of the Heaven-Mending Sect had even more restrictions, and they would most likely only participate when it was time to crush the heavens or mend the heavens. He didn't say anything in response to the ancient dragon empress' refusal. Instead, he dialed a voice transmission. The voice transmission was quickly connected. "Hey, Chun Chun, the Southern Front is in a dire situation. Are you going to participate?" And Lin asked. "Well, I'm afraid it's not the right time for me to participate. It's not a good thing to expose my power too early." Chun Chun hesitated momentarily before replying. The ancient dragon empress and Raphaela nodded upon hearing this. As the second heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, it was clearly not the right time for Chun Chun to participate. And Lin spoke in a cold voice. "I'm going to participate as well. I plan to destroy the entire southern front of the heavenly human tribe." "Senior student Chun Chun, are you really not coming? You're coming as well?" Chun Chun seemed to be a little excited. "Let's go together." And Lin continued. "Our opponents could be very powerful. Call on teacher Ancient Dragon Empress and Raphaela as well. Let's attack together, and we'll be able to cut through metal." "I feel like," Chun Chun said slowly. "You're right. Ancient Dragon Empress. Raphaela, no. This is not the second heavenly disciple I know." The Ancient Dragon Empress and Raphaela roared in their hearts. Why was it that Chun Chun's attitude had changed so drastically after encountering Lin? "You want to go together?" It felt like Chun Chun was Lin's follower. What was going on? What was even more tragic was that even in a time like this, Lin hadn't forgotten to drag the Ancient Dragon Empress and Raphaela down with him. His refusal just then was completely useless. He had been slapped in the face at the speed of light. "Master and disciple are of one mind. Can I expel them from a sect?" The Ancient Dragon Empress spoke expressionlessly. She felt like she had been led into a trap by Lin, and she felt like she was about to throw up a mouthful of blood. As expected, a few seconds later, the Ancient Dragon Empress voice transmission talisman sounded. Chun Chun discussed with her about attacking the heavenly human tribe on the southern front. The Ancient Dragon Empress only ended the voice transmission after a short while. She looked up at the sky sadly. When did it start? The Ancient Dragon Empress thought about it for a moment, and she felt like her tragic dragon life had begun ever since she entered the 4-9 Immortal sect. "Please calm down first." Raphaela could sense that something was amiss with the Ancient Dragon Empress emotions, and she immediately unleashed a heart resuscitation technique. This isn't actually a bad thing. The heavenly human tribe is currently attacking the human race from 5 different fronts. Aside from the Western Front, which is being defended by the Wessie Alliance, all of the other 4 fronts are approaching the Kingdom of the 9 States, and some of them have even entered the Kingdom of the 9 States. If we can severely wound the heavenly human tribe on one of these fronts, it would be extremely beneficial to the human race. Raphaela's voice was like a gentle spring. She didn't think that they would be able to completely wipe out the heavenly human tribe on one of their fronts, so she only used the word severely wound. The Ancient Dragon Empress nodded upon hearing her words of consolation. She understood this logic, but she still couldn't help but feel a little depressed at this moment, and Lin had already called the Celestial Arch and Shangwani. And Lin, "Hey, Celestial Arch, what's wrong? You sound like you're quite down in the dumps." "I'm fine." "And Lin, your 4-9 Immortal sect really is amazing. You're still able to remain true to yourself in the face of such temptations." And Lin was quite perplexed by the Celestial Thearcha's words of praise. Only after a long while did he come to his senses. Of the entire Celestial Court, the Celestial Court seemed to be the only one that wasn't a member of the heaven-crushing sect. Thankfully, there were still sects like the 4-9 Immortal sect that refused to join the heaven-crushing sect, which was the only source of warmth for the Celestial Arch. "And Lin, what do you want from me?" The Celestial Thearcha's voice was very gentle. And Lin revealed his plan to attack the southern front to the Celestial Arch. The Celestial Arch was silent for a long time upon hearing that the Ancient Dragon Empress and Chun Chun were going to participate in this operation as well, but he still agreed in the end. And Lin also contacted Shangwan via voice transmission talisman and asked her to take the great Empress in Mengji with her in order to take Su Xiaolan's place to defend the northern front. She didn't hesitate at all and immediately agreed. She was very straightforward, and Lin held a special place in Shangguan Yi's heart. Shangguan Yi wouldn't refuse any of his requests. Thus, an extermination team was officially established. No one knew what kind of earth-shattering changes this extermination team was going to unleash on the entire Taichu continent, and Lin looked at everyone, and a sense of pride welled up in his heart. Su Xiaolan, Little Huang, the ancient dragon empress Raphaela, Dabai, Xiaohong, Merlin, Cassidy, Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qianyun, Yiling, Tina, Lu Qianhuan, Sun Yulaw, Yao Mingxi, and Bai Ling. There was also the Celestial Arch and Chun Chun, who were preparing to rendezvous with them in the Gem State. These were the members of the extermination team. Even though it was a small team, it was not a small team at all. On the contrary, if this team were to be made known to the world, they would definitely tremble in fear, as this was a team that could rival any top-rate force on the continent like the Celestial Court. We're going to encounter a lot of dangers in this battle. If possible, I really don't want all of you to be involved in this battle. And Lin spoke in a slow voice. The ancient dragon empress' lips twitched upon hearing this. You were the one who dragged me here by force. However, the heavenly human tribe has already invaded the kingdom of the 9 states and is slaughtering our brethren. Many of our sect disciples and other comrades have already sacrificed their lives to build a great wall of flesh and blood at the border of the kingdom of the 9 states. As the number 1 immortal sect in the kingdom of the 9 states, what reason do we have to back down now? I'm back, and it's time for the 4-9 immortal sect's sword to be unsheathed. Everyone, please come with me to reinforce the Gem State. Battle the heavens, destroy the heavenly human tribe. And Lin clenched his fists high into the air as he spoke in a thunderous voice. Everyone's battle intent surged upon seeing this. Battle the heavens, destroy the heavenly human tribe. Battle the heavens, destroy the heavenly human tribe. Battle the heavens, destroy the heavenly human tribe. Woof! And Lin. Chapter 1500. Dabai immediately shut his mouth when he realized that he had misbehaved. He stared at Enlin with an innocent expression on his face. Let's go. Enlin couldn't be bothered to argue with him. He looked up into the southern sky and announced, "Let's go." The cry of a phoenix erupted into the heavens. The divine flame extended to the ends of the sky like a red carpet. All of the disciples could see the spectacular spectacle of the phoenix flying out of the 4-9 immortal sect. However, what they didn't see was that there was a team of about a dozen people on the phoenix's back. They were the extermination team that was going to kill all of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings on the southern front, within the Gem State in the southwestern region of the Kingdom of the 9 States. Qiuguang City was a large city on the border of the Gem State. The city walls extended for over 500 kilometers, like a massive dormant dragon. A massive yin-yang slaughter spell formation enshrouded the entire city, which could unleash power comparable to a full-force attack from a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. It was once the largest city in the Gem State of the Kingdom of the 9 States. It was also the home of one of the 9 Imperials, the Divine Agriculture Imperial family. But now, the city had been reduced to a sea of flames. The Great Formation had been destroyed, and the once colossal immortal Cultivator, the majestic imperial family that had suppressed an entire province, had been reduced to ruins. Countless living beings passed away amidst the screams of pain and agony, and blood dyed the entire city red. Several million cultivators of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army perished during the battle, and they were forced to retreat toward Nanchao City in the end. Immediately afterward, a brutal massacre ensued. Qiuguang City was huge, and close to 100 million humans were wailing in despair. In the face of an army of close to 30 million, they didn't even have a chance to run. Their bodies were punctured by pillars of white light, and their blood was sucked dry by crimson-robed living beings. Their bodies were entangled by ghostly figures, and their vitality was severed amid horror and despair, blood, despair, howls, and souls were destroyed one by one. Fresh lives were being slaughtered wantonly and trampled on. Their enemy didn't seem to have any intention of leaving anyone alive. They were determined to turn Guang City into a city of the dead. This was actually one of the principles of the heavenly human tribe. Wherever their army went, all humans would be destroyed. An army of 30 million was a terrifying force. Even after a great battle, they had only lost about 3 million soldiers. They still had more than 26 million soldiers. 6 million soldiers were crazily slaughtering the creatures in the city who did not have time to escape, while the remaining 20 million soldiers continued to pursue the fleeing troops of the 9 States Coalition Army. The heavenly human tribe forces on the southern front were unleashed in full force, and in conjunction with the forces of the Blood Tribe and the Void Spirit Tribe, they were able to break through the dual defenses of the Snake Spirit Clan and the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army of the Spirit Lake Realm. Blood flowed through the Kingdom of the 9 States like a hot knife through butter, and it was as if they were going to change the course of the war for the last several decades. The cold and emotionless heavenly human tribe, the bloodthirsty and violent Blood Tribe, and the twisted and insane Void Spirit Tribe had undoubtedly become the nightmare of the Kingdom of the 9 States. The people of the Kingdom of the 9 States struggled and resisted, but they were powerless to do anything. On the 2 battlefields, the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army of the Kingdom of the 9 States and the Snake Spirit Clan of the Spirit Lake Realm were both facing the most ferocious attacks at the same time. All of the major armies were retreating in a frenzy, and who could save them? The young man who had sworn to resist had his head pierced through by the light beam and died. The children on the ground howled and wailed before their blood was sucked dry by the bloodthirsty Blood Tribe cultivators. The elderly man who was limping away was tortured to death by the Void Spirit Tribe cultivators. This was a one-sided massacre. Guang City had been transformed into a living hell. Meanwhile, in Nanchao City, which was 30,000 kilometers away from Guang City, this was the second largest city in the Gem State, as well as the most important gate into the Kingdom of the 9 States. The retreating human army had established a second line of defense here. Emperor Changsheng had already set up an extremely powerful Dao integration stage formation in the city, and he was stationed on the city wall with sect leader Zhu Shuza, Grand Elder Sidufeng, and a group of return to Void Stage mighty figures of over 5 million cultivators. This was an extremely powerful force. However, all of their expressions were dark and gloomy. The sun was clearly shining brightly, but everyone felt as if there were dark clouds weighing down upon them. Some of the more mentally weak cultivators were even trembling uncontrollably. They had to face several hundred soul-piercing stage generals who were just barely comparable to return to Void Stage mighty figures. A dozen or so Heaven Pioneer Stage great generals who were just barely comparable to Dao integration stage mighty figures. And there were even legendary divine Heaven Stage and representatives of the Heavenly Dao. Aside from that, there was also the combined army of the Blood Tribe and the Void Spirit Tribe. Even though the Snake Spirit Clan of the Spirit Lake Realm was taking some of the pressure off of them, even if they had to face half of the Heavenly Human Tribe's forces, they would still be finding it hard to breathe. What do we do? Are there any reinforcements from other places? Zhu Shu's body was riddled with wounds, but he still stood tall and straight, and he looked into the distance with a cold expression on his face. Emperor Sheng shook his head with a forlorn expression. The Heavenly Human Tribe seems to have reached an agreement. Battles have erupted on all fronts, and they're all on a very large scale. They don't seem to want to wait any longer. Zhu Shuza fell silent upon hearing this, and his expression became extremely grave. The human army had been on the back foot from the get-go. If it weren't for the fact that they were wary of the heaven-crushing sect and those gods of creation, this war would have most likely been over long ago. Now, were they finally going to adjust their battle plan? What do the 4-9 immortal sect's other top-rate powerful beings say? Situ Feng asked. Every bit of help they could get was good news. I can't get through to their voice transmission talismans. A disappointed expression appeared on Zhu Shu's face. The current situation was that their enemies were too powerful, and no matter how much they tried, they couldn't compare to their enemies. If they tried to take their enemies down with them, it was very likely that they would all be wiped out. All of the cultivators on the city wall had already gotten into formation again, but the atmosphere was becoming more and more oppressive. They couldn't back down in this battle. If Nanchao City was breached, the Kingdom of the Nine States really would fall into the enemy's hands. Hundreds of millions, if not billions, of human beings would be slaughtered. Just as the atmosphere was becoming more and more oppressive, a voice suddenly sounded. Her Majesty will definitely come. The voice was clear and gentle. Zhu Shuza raised his head and turned to discover a handsome man with a transcendent aura. He knew that this man was Adam of the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Realm Pavilion, and he was a mighty figure at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage. His combat prowess was extremely terrifying, and he was basically invincible below the Tao integration stage. If he and his wife, Eve, fought alongside each other, they could even defeat Heaven Pioneer stage great generals of the Heavenly Human Tribe. Our goddess will definitely lead us to victory. An extremely beautiful woman walked over gracefully. Her face was filled with an unquestionable expression. This woman was none other than Eve of the Realm Pavilion. For some reason, Zhu Shuza felt a little more at ease at the sight of the two of them. Her Majesty, she was mysterious, powerful, and revered by countless powerful beings. She really could be referred to as a goddess. Such an extraordinary woman was only that man's beast pet. If that man were here, then perhaps they would have a better chance of defending this city. Zhu Shuza thought back to that figure that seemed to be very far away, yet also as if it had only happened yesterday. Boom, boom, boom. Divine lightning suddenly exploded in the sky, as if the heavens were roaring with rage and delivering punishment. The white sky, the crimson earth, and the inky black sky quickly approached Nanchao City. Zhu Shuza took a deep breath. They're here. Chapter 1501. With his powerful spiritual consciousness, Zhu Shuza was able to perceive the number of enemies. There were at least 20 million Heavenly Human Tribe, Blood Tribe, and Void Spirit Tribe armies. There were only 3 million Heavenly Human Tribe soldiers, and the rest were all Blood Tribe and Void Spirit Tribe armies. However, in terms of quality, the Heavenly Human Tribe was the most terrifying. There were 8 Heaven Pioneer stage Great Generals, 260 Soul-piercing stage Generals, 100,000 Arcane Body stage Powerful Beings, and close to 3 million Shi Refining stage Soldiers. In particular, the Heavenly Human Tribe was extremely proficient in combination attacks. 3 great generals who were just barely comparable to Tao integration stage super mighty figures were able to hold their own against a veteran Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Aside from that, Emperor Yi Ding and Empress Helen of the Blood Tribe, as well as Emperor Bei Xing of the Void Spirit Tribe, had also appeared in the distance, exuding vast and terrifying divine might. In terms of top combat power alone, the Nine States Allied forces were at an absolute disadvantage. Zhu Shuza knew that they couldn't back down anymore. If Nanchao City was conquered, then the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army would be like wolves in a pen of sheep. The massacre that had taken place in Xiaoguang City would take place in every region of the Kingdom of the Nine States. They had to defend Nanchao City to the death. He wasn't the only one who understood this. Every cultivator who fought alongside him understood this as well. They had no reason to continue retreating. This was the last line of defense. As the commander-in-chief of the Kingdom of the Nine States Southern United Army, Zhu Shuza commanded close to 1/5 of the cultivators in the Kingdom of the Nine States. The Vermilion Bird sect had mobilized almost the entire sect, but many of their members had also perished, and it was very likely that more would perish in the coming days. He could not help but turn his gaze to the soldiers behind him. Among them, there were famous cultivators in the Nine States, as well as people he was very familiar with. Chun Xinran, Zhu Yuanzhou, Ji Yongfang, Mo Hai, Lan Yin, Yang Yuan. They were all trustworthy and reliable comrades, but in the next moment, some of them might be buried in this great battle. Zhu Shuza's heart stirred, and he took a deep breath. The next battle will determine the fate of the Kingdom of the Nine States. We pledge our lives to protect the 9 prefectures. All the officers and soldiers shouted in unison. Zhu Xu's eyes were slightly red. The enemy is very strong. If this battle, all the soldiers, we can die without regrets. Their battle intent soared into the sky like the sun, and their battle roars resounded through the 9 provinces. Nanchao City. One long-range spell formation after another began to light up, illuminating the entire sky. Heaven and earth yuan qi surged. More than 5 million cultivators frantically channeled their essence qi into the formation. Right at this moment, several thousand pillars of white light pierced through the air before crashing down toward Nanchao City. Each and every one of them was powerful enough to raise a mountain to the ground. They spread out in the sky and replaced the blue dome of heaven. Ordinary cultivators who saw this scene would definitely feel a deep sense of despair. Setting aside everything else, if those pillars of white light were to fall upon Nanchao City without any impediment, the second largest city in the gem state would most likely be razed to the ground. However, at this moment, the Dao integration stage formation set up by Emperor Changsheng was already operating at a crazy speed. At the same time, millions of cultivators infused their vital energy into the spell formation, and a series of dazzling and powerful spell techniques shot into the distance, clashing with the white pillar of light and exploding with violent booms. Earth-shattering spell techniques clashed, lighting up the entire area within a radius of over 1,000 kilometers. The earth crumbled, gale-force winds swept through the air, and destructive flames wreaked havoc outside the city. Occasionally, there would be a few pillars of light that managed to escape, but they were all kept at bay by the Dao integration stage formation. At first glance, the two sides didn't appear to have much of a difference in power. However, they knew that the real storm had yet to arrive. Sure enough, a series of crimson-robed warriors appeared on the horizon. There were over 10 million of them, and they quickly approached Nanchao City like a swarm of locusts. Their crimson robes were like blood on the ground, and they slowly spread toward the city until death descended upon this magnificent city. The Blood Tribe army had appeared. An indescribable sense of oppression began to set in. Not only that, but countless black figures began to appear in the air. As long as the cultivators looked at it from the front, they could see that the void was filled with distortions. They could not be seen clearly, and they were laughing maniacally. They were falling into depravity, and they were even singing. The melody caused people to go crazy, and their twisted and crazy postures made people feel countless negative emotions, as if they wanted to fall with them. The Void Spirit Tribe army had also arrived. Most of these off-flutters could fly, and they occupied the sky. At the very top of the sky was a vast expanse of white, and there were heavenly human tribe powerful beings enshrouded in divine light, as if they were gods who were about to unleash their merciless wrath. Only now did all of the cultivators truly understand what it meant to have heaven and earth blotted out. They were enemies from the heavens to the earth. There was no road to heaven and no door to hell. Spell techniques from both sides were still clashing, and sparks of energy permeated the entire heaven and earth. This time, not only were the heavenly human tribe powerful beings attacking, but the Blood Tribe on the ground and the Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings in the air also sprang into action. The crimson energy was violent, and the inky black spell techniques were extremely difficult to defend against. The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army was instantly on the back foot, and the Dao integration stage formation was being bombarded relentlessly. Right at this moment, 1,000 inky black cannons suddenly appeared on the city wall. These were the strategic cannons provided by the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Purple Star Pavilion, the Ionic Collapse Cannons. Bursts of golden light surged from the cannons' massive muzzles, following which an earth-shattering boom erupted. Boom, 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 boom. Golden spherical energy cannons pierced through space before crashing into the Heavenly Human Tribe army. The Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings seemed to have seen these cannons before, and their expressions shifted drastically as they hurriedly evaded the cannons. However, the cannons were extremely fast, and there was no way they could evade them. The golden cannons crashed into the heavenly human tribe battle formation before exploding violently. A peculiar light proliferated forth, and a vast number of extremely tiny particles proliferated forth, creating a series of invisible strings that caused the space around them to crumble. The empty space began to twist and warp before instantly collapsing within a radius of over a kilometer, as if the ground had suddenly caved in. The destructive power of space instantly arrived. After just one cannon blast, several dozen heavenly human tribe powerful beings were reduced to mincemeat amid blood-curdling wails. Meanwhile, there were 1,000 of these cannons in Nanchao City, and 1,000 cannons were fired. In less than 10 seconds, over 50,000 heavenly human tribe powerful beings had been slain. After one cannon blast, the cultivators' expressions remained unchanged, as if they were already accustomed to the power of the ionic collapse cannons. They continued to recharge their cannons in preparation for the next cannon blast. However, the heavenly human tribe, blood tribe, and void spirit tribe armies were not going to wait for them to recharge their cannons. Countless spell techniques instantly began to rain down upon Nanchao City again. The cultivators used their long-range combination spell formations to kill many enemies, but the spell formation protecting Nanchao City was gradually becoming more and more unstable under the relentless bombardment. What kind of power would 20 million enemies unleash at the same time be able to unleash? Emperor Changsheng's Dao integration stage spell formation to protect the cultivators on the city wall was not going to last very long. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura swept toward Nanchao City like the heavens themselves. The 8 Heaven Pioneer Stage great generals hovered in midair at the forefront of Nanchao City, and their golden eyes were appraising the city down below with an indifferent expression. A great general wielding 2 swords spoke expressionlessly, as if he were announcing the fate of his enemies. Trash of the Tai Chu continent, it's time for you to retire from the stage of history. Chapter 1502. The 8 Heaven Pioneer Stage great generals arrived in the air above Nanchao City. All of their eyes were completely emotionless, and their boundless auras struck an instinctive sense of fear into the hearts of many cultivators. They were living beings who carried out the judgment of the heavens, and their presence was equivalent to that of the heavens. No one could resist the might of the heavens. At the same time, extremely dazzling divine symbols appeared on the hands of the 8 heavenly human tribe great generals, and a white light began to fall from the heavens to bless their bodies. This was the power bestowed upon them by the heavens. Energy also converged at this instant, clearly trying to break through the spell formation around Nanchao City. Oomph! A cold harumph sounded. An extremely powerful aura burned and twisted the auras unleashed by the great generals like flames. It was also at this moment that Grand Elder Situ Feng and sect leader Zhu Shuza rose into the air and charged toward the 8 Heaven Pioneer Stage great generals without any hesitation. Heaven-crushing vermilion bird flames. Situ Feng spread open his hands, and pure, white, holy flames swept forth like a tsunami over 10,000 feet in length toward the 8 Heaven Pioneer Stage great generals in the sky. Heaven-crushing 9 revolutions leaf flame sword. Zhu Shuza spread open his hand, and the vermilion bird sword appeared in his grasp, from which crimson flames erupted for over 50 kilometers before sweeping toward the 8 great generals. In this day and age, the prefix heaven-crushing sounded like a very shameful phrase, but all of the cultivators on the city wall felt as if the heaven-crushing technique would be incomplete without it. Both of the Dao integration stage super mighty figures had imbued their heaven-crushing true intent into their spell techniques. It was exactly because of this that the 8 heavenly human tribe great generals became extremely serious and didn't dare to underestimate the spell techniques before them. White lines suddenly extended through the air beneath their feet before quickly intertwining to form an extremely intricate spell formation. A white defensive barrier also appeared at this moment. Heaven Pioneer Stage cultivators were already able to borrow power from the heavens. Their barrier was imbued with the will of the heavens, which could keep all powers at bay. Boom! The holy vermilion bird flames crashed viciously into the barrier. The heavenly human tribe, great generals, were knocked back several kilometers by the holy flames, and their defensive barrier tremored violently, but they remained completely unscathed. But before they could calm down, a giant dark red sword that pierced through the sky was already slashing towards them. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers, and its sword might was vast and boundless. It carried with it a heaven-crushing true intent that could destroy all things, and it sliced apart heaven and earth in an invincible manner. Bang! The violent collision was accompanied by a sharp hiss. A crack appeared on the barrier formed by the marshals, and it was getting bigger and bigger. Hold on! The sword-wielding celestial tribe, male, gritted his teeth. Finally, as the spells clashed, the power of the crimson sword gradually dissipated. At that moment, the barrier fell off like an eggshell. One of the heavenly human tribe great generals looked up to discover a handsome man with long flowing hair standing before him. The long sword in his hand was becoming larger and larger in his eyes. The direction of the stab was shockingly his head. Marshal Ling Luo. Seeing this, the other 7 marshals hurriedly circulated their powers to stop Zhu Shuza. However, ropes formed from white holy flames started to wrap around them, trying to stop them, even if it was just for a second. The 5 great generals faltered, but there were still 2 great generals who continued to attack Zhu Shuza with all their might. One of them stabbed forward with 2 fingers, while the other slashed down with his hand like a saber. Zhu Shuza didn't take evasive measures. Instead, he was like a fearless warrior of death as his vermilion bird sword continued onward with an unstoppable force, as if he were going to eat Great General Ling Luo alive. Great General Ling Luo let loose an almighty roar as he materialized a white crystalline shield before him. At the same time, he hurriedly retreated, and his body became insubstantial. As a heaven pioneer stage powerful being, his reaction speed was extremely fast, and his body almost dissipated into mist in the next second. However, to his surprise, Zhu Shuza still didn't put away his sword to defend himself. The vermilion bird's sword continued onward and instantly pierced through the white crystalline shield. An extremely sharp sword intent then struck Great General Ling Luo's glabella before quickly spreading throughout his entire body and incinerating him. Great General Ling Luo's blood-curdling cries erupted into the heavens. At the same time, Zhu Shuza had no time to evade. His chest was punctured by one of the great generals, and his waist was slashed by another great general. Blood stained the vermilion bird sect leader's red Taoist robe even more vibrant. Zhu Shuza didn't panic in the slightest as he hurriedly retreated. He looked at Great General Ling Luo, who had been reduced to a cloud of smoke amid his blood-curdling cries. It's time for you to retire from the stage of history. You useless pieces of trash who only know how to beg for help from the heavens. The Vermilion Bird Sect leader's voice reverberated throughout the entire Nanchao city, and all of the cultivators were reinvigorated. It was quite clear that he was responding to Ling Luo's statement that it was time for the trash of the Tai Chu continent to retire from the stage of history. All of the cultivators felt as if they had been vindicated. At the same time, Zhu Shuza had burned Ling Luo to death within a minute. Slaying one of the heavenly human tribe great generals also greatly boosted morale. The dark clouds hanging over the hearts of over 5 million cultivators seemed to have dissipated significantly, and they began to unleash spell techniques to attack their enemies in the distance. The 7 heavenly human tribe great generals surrounded Zhu Shuza and Sidu Feng and engaged in battle again. They knew that Zhu Shuza was going to fight with no regard for his own life, so they became even more cautious. Their main strategy was to keep Zhu Shuza at bay before slowly wearing him down. They unleashed all types of binding spell techniques to keep the 2 Vermilion Bird Sect super mighty figures at bay. Ha ha ha! Carefree laughter suddenly erupted in the distance. Blood splattered through the air as a terrifying aura materialized before crashing violently into the formation outside the city wall. Even when you had an army of 10 million cultivators, you were still defeated so badly. How are you going to fight us now? Become my food. A man with crimson eyes chuckled in a cruel manner. Crap, it's Emperor Yi Deng. Some of the cultivators' expressions shifted drastically. At this moment, another pitch-black sleeve drifted over from afar and stuck on a Monarch Changsheng's formation. It swam gently like a lover's caress. In the next instant, a beautiful woman in a black cloud dress with a peaceful expression appeared at the very edge of the formation. She pressed a hand against the formation and gently patted it. Bam, bam, bam. The Tao integration stage formation tremored violently again and again. Crap, Empress Helen is here as well. Another Tao integration stage blood tribe mighty figure appeared, and all of the human cultivators' faces paled as they spoke in trembling voices. An extremely sinister voice also sounded. A black shooting star flew through the air, engulfing all of the spell techniques in its path before crashing violently into Emperor Yi Deng's formation. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. A hole had been blasted into the Tao integration stage formation. PFFF. Emperor Yi Deng suffered spell technique backlash from the combined attacks of 3 Tao integration stage mighty figures, and he finally threw up a mouthful of blood. It's over. Even Emperor Bei Xing of the Void Spirit Tribe is here. Some of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army's morale had just been reignited, but despair welled up in their hearts again at the sight of the Tao integration stage super mighty figures. This was an instinctive fear toward power. Chapter 1503. The 3 Tao integration stage super mighty figures had forcibly broken through the formation around Nanchao City. Emperor Bei Xing was a ball with sharp spikes all over its body. The spikes were constantly lengthening and shortening, and they were constantly changing positions. The inky black divine light flashed alternately with darkness, making it appear as if it were a twinkling star. Its body over 1,000 feet in length trembled as it let out an ethereal laughter that was imbued with indescribable twisted insanity. Cuckoo. Emperor Changsheng, you Olbi asterisk starred. Let's see how you're going to escape from us 3 Tao integration stage mighty figures. Emperor Sheng didn't say anything, and a determined expression appeared on his face as he repaired the formation with all his might. He was able to unleash his full power by borrowing the power of the formation. But correspondingly, once the formation was damaged, he would also be injured. He was like a live target. As the great formation that covered the entire city trembled, countless golden particles of light floated up from the ground and then gathered in the sky, condensing into a dazzling golden divine sword that was filled with vast power. Go! Emperor Changsheng stood on the city wall before slashing his sword toward Emperor Bei Xing. The golden divine sword transformed into a streak of golden light, and the space in its wake was instantly sliced in half. Emperor Bei Xing's smile hadn't even faded when the divine sword was already upon him. Shooting star whale. A crack suddenly appeared on Emperor Bei Xing's ball, upon which an earth-shattering wail erupted. The wail of grief and rage was like a roar of despair, like an abyss of sin. An inky black sound wave crashed directly into the golden divine sword, causing it to falter momentarily. Not only that, but some of the wail managed to penetrate Emperor Changsheng's formation and struck the cultivators on the city wall. Over 10,000 cultivators instantly had bloodshot eyes and saliva flowing from the corners of their mouths as they clamped their hands over their ears and howled with anguish. They were almost driven insane by pain and despair. 1 second later, over 10,000 cultivators perished. They had been eroded to death by Emperor Bei Xing's cries. Emperor Changsheng let loose an enraged roar, and a divine light that lit up heaven and earth erupted from his golden divine sword as the power of the formation surged into the divine sword in a frenzy. Ding! A crisp sword ringing erupted. The divine sword tore through the power of Emperor Bei-Shing's cries before striking its spiky body. Oh! Emperor Bei-Shing howled with anguish as it was sent flying for over 10 kilometers by the divine sword, and inky black blood gushed forth from its body. However, right at this moment, Helen and the other cultivators took this opportunity to attack Emperor Bei-Shing, to attack the barrier of the formation in a frenzy. Rumble. The formation was destroyed. Once again, the sea of blood surged towards the city wall, causing it to crack. It was like a dam that had collapsed under the impact of a flood. The blood-colored flood that had broken through the dam surged into the city wall with a monstrous momentum. More than 20,000 cultivators were devoured by the sea of blood. The residents of Nanchao City had already begun to evacuate, but some of them didn't even get a chance to cry out before they were completely melted by the sea of blood. Bastard! Why are you targeting me? Monarch Chang Sheng cursed as he frantically channeled his power to repair the gap in the formation. It was also at this moment that Empress Helen's black sleeve began to tear the formation apart. The cloud sleeve was like a roaming dragon, wreaking havoc on the city wall. All the cultivators that were swept up by it had their blood drained dry, and they were directly turned into dried corpses. Rumble. The cannon rumbled. Golden cannon blasted into the cloud sleeve, causing the space around it to crumble and twist. The cloud sleeve was also showing signs of crumbling, but it immediately returned to normal in the next instant. The cloud sleeve instantly killed the cultivator operating the cannon before taking an inky black cannon with it. Oh, so this is the 4-9 Immortal Sex Ion collapsing cannon? Empress Helen looked at the cannon before her with a smile on her face. It's a good thing. All of a sudden, the inky black cannon turned red, and an extremely terrifying light erupted from it. An indescribable sense of danger instantly engulfed Empress Helen's heart. Her eyes focused, and, right at this moment, the cannon had already exploded. Boom! Red energy erupted forth like the sun, incinerating everything in its surroundings. Destructive ion flames incinerated heaven and earth, and space collapsed as if it were the end of the world. Elder Zhou Yu of the Purple Star Pavilion stood on the city walls with a peculiar glint in his eyes. With a faint smile, he said, "In the past decades, there has never been a person who has been qualified to steal from the Purple Star Pavilion. If you want it that badly, I'll give you a self-detonating cannon." A black shadow tore through the rampaging energy and retreated. This was Empress Helen's slightly disheveled figure. She looked at Zhou Yu with a thunderous expression. "No one can stop me from getting what I want." The terrifying aura of a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure instantly swept forth. Zhou Yu was struck by an unprecedented sense of terrifying pressure, but he still stood firmly atop the city wall. After deciding to join the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army, he was already prepared to die on the battlefield. Emperor Bei-Shing tore through the golden divine sword with its spike before making a comeback. The wounds on its body writhed and squirmed as they healed at a rate discernible to the naked eye. Emperor Yi Deng's attacks became more and more ferocious. Blood trickled from the corners of Emperor Changsheng's lips, but he still maintained the spell formation with all his might, materializing a divine sword with the power of the spell formation in retaliation. Kukuku. It's useless no matter how much you struggle. I can exhaust you to death even if I have to. There's only one outcome for all of you today, and that's death. Emperor Bei-Shing cackled as its peculiar voice pierced through the spell formation, spreading for over 500 kilometers before entering the ears of all of the cultivators present. It was like a demonic voice, and all of their morale was dampened to a certain extent. It was also at this moment that the Blood Tribe Army and the Void Spirit Tribe Army had already swarmed onto the city wall. Emperor Sheng couldn't use the spell formation to keep so many living beings at bay at once. All he could do was keep the power that was enough to destroy the city at bay. He could only leave the rest to the cultivators defending the city. An extremely ferocious battle finally erupted at this moment. The enemy's united army had been reduced from 20 million to 17 million, while the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army had been reduced from over 5 million to just over 4 million. On the surface, it looked as if there were more enemies dying, but they all knew that this was only because the defending side had taken advantage of the spell formation and terrain. When the truly ferocious battle erupted, the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army would die faster and faster. One enemy after another flew up or scaled the city wall, and the cultivators of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army withdrew from the long-range attack formation before drawing their weapons to face the oncoming enemies. A bloody battle ensued as blood stained the entire city wall. One returned to Void Stage Mighty Figure after another intentionally avoided their allies as they flew into the air and clashed with one another. Devastating power erupted in the sky, as if it were trying to pulverize the entire sky. In a battle of return to Void Stage Mighty Figures, the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army had a slight advantage. There were over 200 soul-piercing stage Heavenly Human Tribe Mighty Figures, over 20 Blood Tribe return to Void Stage Mighty Figures, and a dozen or so Void Spirit Tribe return to Void Stage Mighty Figures. But they were being crushed by the 80 or so return to Void Stage Mighty Figures of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army. The 4-9 Immortal Sects Blood Pavilion was simply too powerful. There were a dozen or so holy worshippers, all of whom were at the pinnacle of the return to Void Intermediate Stage at the very least, and any one of them could take on several enemies at once. Empress Helen was just about to join in the battle against Emperor Changsheng. However, 3 gorgeous figures had surrounded Empress Helen in a triangular formation. Empress Helen was a little dazed and disconsolate upon seeing the 3 of them. The 3 mighty figures of the Blood Pavilion, Ada, Jin Ling, and Jin Yao, were facing off against their former master. Chapter 1504. Ada's crimson robe fluttered around her as she stared at the woman in the black cloud dress with a complex expression on her face. Jin Ling and Jin Yao gripped their weapons tightly in an extremely tense manner. Both of them knew just how powerful Helen was. It was rumored that the triplets could unleash Dao integration stage power for a short period of time by using a special spell formation. However, what they didn't know was that the 3 of them had often sparred with Empress Helen 100 years ago, and all of them had been beaten to a pulp. And that was when Helen had held back. If she hadn't held back, they would have died countless times already. Now that the 3 of them had surrounded Empress Helen, they were clearly prepared to fight to the death. I thought you wouldn't dare to look me in the face. Helen's eyes were like bottomless black pits. It is the responsibility of the 4-9 Immortal Sect to defend the Kingdom of the Nine States. Ada gripped her golden dagger tightly as she spoke in a cold but firm voice. Helen burst into laughter with a hint of mockery. Don't you find it hilarious that a Blood Tribe mighty figure, the sworn enemy of the human race, would say something like defending the Kingdom of the Nine States? We are now members of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, and we have been acknowledged by the human race, Jin Ling retorted. Helen heaved a forlorn sigh. I don't know why you chose to side with Enlin, but now that Enlin is dead, all of you are free. So why do you still want to stay in a human sect? Staying in the 4-9 Immortal Sect will only result in death. If you return to the Blood Tribe, I can use my power to grant you a special pardon. An extremely sincere expression appeared on her face as she spoke. Come back, and I can forgive you. Ada, Jin Ling, and Jin Yao's expressions all shifted slightly upon hearing this. Ada paused momentarily before replying. Please give us 10 minutes to consider. Helen hesitated momentarily before nodding. All right. Thus, the 4 of them stood silently in the air, paying no heed to the earth-shattering battle taking place outside. Jin Ling and Jin Yao seemed to have read each other's minds, and both of them remained silent. Helen, why aren't you fighting? Hurry up and help us kill Emperor Changsheng. Deng yelled in a perplexed manner at the sight of the woman standing in midair. 10 minutes. Helen replied in an indifferent voice. Deng didn't know what was going on with Helen, but the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army was already at the end of the line, so he didn't mind wasting some time and continued to attack Emperor Changsheng. Ada was quite elated. If the 3 of them were to battle Helen normally, they would probably only be able to last 10 minutes at most. Coupled with the 10 minutes they had to think, they would be able to buy the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army 20 minutes in total. Thinking about it, this method was very smart. Ada silently praised her own delaying tactic. However, a trace of worry surfaced in her heart. Could 20 minutes really change anything? Emperor Changsheng was being completely suppressed by Emperor Yi Deng and Emperor Beixing, and he had to divert some of his attention to use the formation to defend against some destructive attacks. So it was only a matter of time before he was defeated. Zhu Shuze and Situ Feng were also entangled by the 7 heavenly human tribe great generals, and it was difficult to determine who would emerge victorious. As for the battlefield below, the 17 million soldiers were fighting against 4 million cultivators. If they continued to waste time, it would be a massacre. There was no hope for them to turn the tables. The people in the battle did not deliberately think in this direction. They knew that if they thought in this direction, they would only be left with nothing but despair. All they could do was fight until the very last moment, so that the human race would have fewer enemies. 10 minutes passed. Time quickly elapsed. Time's up. Tell me, what's your choice? Empress Helen asked as she looked at Ada. Ada could see that Emperor Changsheng was already completely exhausted, and he was holding the formation up with all his might. Over 500,000 of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army had perished, and most of the remaining soldiers were also beginning to sustain injuries. 6 return to void stage mighty figures had also fallen. One crimson figure after another charged toward the city wall. A series of twisted, inky black figures danced about on the city wall like a bunch of demons dancing in a frenzy, killing, biting, and singing. Mo Hai blasted the head of a soul formation stage blood tribe mighty figure with a single punch, and the headless soul formation stage blood tribe mighty figure's hand were still flailing about in a frenzy, inflicting a few ghastly wounds on Mo Hai's chest. Lan Yin was usually very smiley, but her expression was now as cold as ice. She transformed into a gust of wind with soul-crushing flames revolving around her sword blade, instantly slaying a dozen or so twisted void spirit tribe mighty figures. Her left sleeve was already completely empty, and blood had stained half of her robe, but she was completely unaware of it. A dozen or so sect disciples laid dead before Elder Zhou Yu of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, but there were still several dozen people fighting for their lives around him. He watched as the disciples he was familiar with fell one by one. There was no sadness or joy on his face. He was like a machine, constantly adjusting the distribution of power from all sides. However, the hand that was commanding was faintly trembling. The outcome seemed to have been decided, but there were almost no deserters among the several million cultivators. Have you made a decision? I'm sorry, Jinling, Jin Yao. Ada gripped her dagger tightly. What are you talking about, big sister? This is my choice as well. Jinling smiled. It was the holy leader who showed us the direction of our tribe, and he taught me the true Tao of blood. Even though he's dead, I shouldn't have betrayed him, Jin Yao chimed in. An expression of astonishment appeared on Helen's face for the first time. They refused? They refused. After pretending to think for 10 minutes, they refused. Helen had thought that she would be able to recruit the 3 generals again, but the triplets pounced toward her without any hesitation. 3 pillars of blood erupted into the sky, and the projection of a golden woman appeared in the sky. There was a crimson halo on her head, and her palm came crashing down viciously toward Helen's head. Helen extended a slender hand toward the heavens to take the attack head-on. The massive golden palm fell from the sky toward the tiny palm, but it was as if it had struck the hardest object in the world, and the palm faltered before beginning to crack down the middle. However, Helen's body was also crushed into the ground, and over 10,000 blood tribe cultivators who didn't have time to evade were instantly pulverized into mincemeat. Ada, Jinling, and Jin Yao immediately unleashed their combination spell formation again, controlling the golden projection in the sky to pursue Helen down below. The battle had reached a climax, and countless living beings were dying every second. Several hundred of Nanchao city walls had already collapsed in several hundred places. Blood stained the city walls red, and the air was filled with a deathly aura. The Blood Tribe cultivators were becoming more and more ferocious as they fought. The Void Spirit Tribe cultivators were unfathomably powerful. Some of the skeletons were cackling sinisterly as they continued to swing their swords through the air. Some of the more powerful skeletons were even able to control the bodies of the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army to fight. The battle was already beginning to become a one-sided affair. 10 minutes later, Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao had all been defeated by Helen. Her inky black sleeve wound itself tightly around the three women's bodies, and a terrifying sealing power made it impossible for them to unleash any power. "You've lost," Helen spoke in an indifferent voice. There were a few wounds on her body, and her snowy white skin was revealed through the cracks in her dress. Emperor Chong Sheng, Zhu Shuza, Situ Feng, and then the entire Kingdom of the Nine States United Army will be wiped out. This is a fate that you can't change. Killing intent began to appear in Helen's eyes. "I had wanted to spare your lives, but it looks like you're all too stubborn, so you can all die now." Her voice had only just fallen. In the extremely distant heavens, a pleasant voice suddenly shook heaven and earth. "Invaders of the Kingdom of the Nine States. Slay them no matter how far away they may be." A river of stars came from afar, traversing 800 li across the firmament. Chapter 1505. Under the scorching sun, a dazzling galaxy of stars intermingled with peculiar flames swept forth from afar, instantly covering a distance of over 400 kilometers. Its light was even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. Many of the high and mighty heavenly human tribe powerful beings who were attacking the cultivators on the city wall didn't even have a chance to escape before they were engulfed by the boundless galaxy of stars. Zhou Yu's body trembled with excitement upon seeing this. "It's the Starfire Annihilation Cannon. Our sect's strategic weapon, the Starfire Battleship, is here." Over 50,000 heavenly human tribe powerful beings were annihilated by a single cannon blast. Countless cultivators looked into the distance to discover a battleship over 50 kilometers in length. The starry sky appeared to be both realistic and illusory, and it was as if the sky had been transformed into night. All of the cultivators recognized that battleship, and they were shocked to the point of confusion, then ecstatic to the point of tears flowing from their eyes. It's the 4-9 Immortal Sex Starfire Battleship. At full power, it's comparable to a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. It was once the 4-9 Immortal Sex defensive weapon. Who would have thought that it would come all the way here? "Our reinforcements have arrived. We have a hold on." All of the cultivators' morale was reinvigorated, and they attacked the enemies around them with even more ferocity. Emperor Yi Deng's body shuddered slightly upon seeing the battleship, and he was struck by an instinctive sense of fear. Perhaps it was because he had recalled the battle from 100 years ago. Emperor Bei Xing chuckled coldly. He. So what if we have a battleship? It's only going to be a little troublesome, but it still won't change your fate of being destroyed. Foolish and despicable beings suffer and weep. Emperor Bei Xing wailed again, and an extremely twisted power of the divine Dao instantly enshrouded an area within a radius of over 50 kilometers. The peculiar power of the divine Dao crashed violently into Emperor Chongsheng's formation. Emperor Chongsheng's body swayed slightly in the face of backlash from the formation, and he seemed to be about to fall, but he still managed to stand up with blood flowing from the corners of his lips. Emperor Bei Xing's power seeped into the formation, driving many of the cultivators insane and suicidal. Die. Trash doesn't deserve to live in this world, does it? As it slaughtered to its heart's content, the black divine light on its body became deeper and denser. The spikes all over its body trembled at an extremely high frequency. It seemed to be in a very good mood. The Starfire battleship approached from afar, and one of its cannons was aimed at Emperor Bei Xing. The spatial cannon exploded violently, instantly striking Emperor Bei Xing and sending it flying. At the same time, the void split open, and the divine fire instantly covered the sky. A phoenix mythological beast over 10,000 feet in length appeared in the sky. It gently flapped its wings, and divine flames incinerated tens of thousands of heavenly human tribe powerful beings into nothingness. Countless cultivators raised their heads and looked at the scene of a deity descending into the world. Before they could recover from the pleasant surprise, an even greater impact was felt in their hearts. This is a phoenix. Could it be the 4-9 immortal sex phoenix? So the divine phoenix maiden is also here. We're finally saved. Some of the cultivators even shed tears. If the appearance of the Starfire battleship had only given them a sliver of hope, then the arrival of the divine phoenix maiden and the phoenix had truly given them hope of victory. 2DAO integration stage, super mighty figures were not to be underestimated. They were more than enough to change the entire course of this battle. The 7 heavenly human tribe great generals were instantly struck by a sense of foreboding. However, the Phoenix had already crashed into their formation in an extremely violent manner. Zhu Shuza and Situ Feng knew that their opportunity had come, and they also sprang into action. The combined power of the 3DAO integration stage super mighty figures tore open a crack in the formation created by the 7 heavenly human tribe great generals. It was also at this moment that divine lightning surged and roared in the heavens. Lightning flashed, and a prideful azure figure instantly appeared before one of the heavenly human tribe great generals. Its golden eyes were imbued with a regal and proud light, as the dragon sparrow sword in its hand rang. Dragon sparrow, god-slaying sword. The heavenly human tribe, great general, unleashed its power in a frenzy. However, the sword projection was unstoppable and unstoppable. The blood-curdling cries of the heavenly human tribe, great general, erupted again. White blood splattered through the air as the holy flame incinerated the great general's body. Another heaven pioneer stage, heavenly human tribe, mighty figure, had fallen. As expected of the divine phoenix maiden, her aura is as vast as the holy vermilion bird, and her lightning strikes are like true dragons. Empress Helen spoke in a cold voice as a grave expression appeared on her face. Her inky black sleeve began to squirm as she stripped the vitality of the 3 blood tribe powerful beings before her. The 6 surviving heavenly human tribe great generals hurtled back in retreat. After a brief moment of shock, smug smiles appeared on their faces again. One of the great generals had already pulled out a white jade stone and seemed to be saying something. Divine Phoenix Maiden, I didn't think that you would appear here. What a foolish decision. You're going to personally bury the northern front of the kingdom of the 9 states. A brawny great general chuckled coldly. A female great general with a voluptuous figure nodded. What a pleasant surprise. The human race is going to fall to both the northern and southern fronts. Looks like your time is up. All of the great generals were not panicking upon seeing Su Xiaolan. Instead, they were elated, as if they had fallen into the trap, and all of them were clapping and dancing in celebration. However, it was also at this moment that another turn of events unfolded. One returned to Void Stage mighty figure, after another leaped out of the Starfire battleship. Yiling wielded the divine tool that Enlin had given her again, and she was slaughtering soul-piercing stage generals in a frenzy. Su Qianyun appeared and disappeared like a ghost, and her moonlight disk was able to kill without leaving a trace. Xin Yuancheng was able to kill wherever he went. The huge white dog had transformed into a ferocious glutton who could eat even more than the blood tribe. Not only did he eat heavenly human tribe powerful beings, but he also ate blood tribe powerful beings and even the ghosts floating in the air. Little Goo transformed into a beautiful rainbow butterfly, and it sprinkled a beautiful rainbow powder that was imbued with a sweet and fragrant aroma. All of the enemies that breathed in this powder immediately decayed and died. Yao Mingxi and Sun Yulu all wielded their immortal swords, and no one was able to stop them. Xiao Hong suddenly appeared among the return to Void Stage Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings, and it swayed its vibrant red head as it sang loudly in praise of the sun. The sun has come out. I'm so happy. A sweet singing voice sounded. All of the Void Spirit Tribe mighty figures stared at the little red flower as if it were an idiot. Cruel smiles appeared on their faces as they pounced toward the little red flower. Such rich life, force, energy. I'm going to eat her. Don't fight. She's mine, so I'm going to eat her first. All of the return to Void Stage Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings pounced toward Xiaohong. It was also at this moment that another sun suddenly appeared above their heads. Several powerful Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings were instantly paralyzed, and there was even a return to Void Stage Void Spirit Tribe powerful being that was slow to react and was incinerated to death by the sun. Xiaohong was at the return to Void Pinnacle Stage, and this was a reason why she dared to do as she pleased in a place where there were so many enemies. At the same time, Merlin, Cassidy, Tina, and Bai Ling, the four mighty figures of the Return to Void Pinnacle Stage, were slaughtering Return to Void Stage enemies in a frenzy. A one-sided battle had instantly taken place. The divine soldiers that had descended from the sky had changed the entire situation. Countless cultivators roared with excitement as they unleashed one spell technique after another toward the enemies before them. They had seen hope. They had to kill all of their enemies and survive. Oomph. A cold expression appeared on Empress Helen's face, and she stopped absorbing the life force energy of Ada and the others as she prepared to execute them as quickly as possible. All of a sudden, a gust of wind blew past. A white-robed figure appeared behind Helen before pressing an inky black sword against her neck. Let them go. Chapter 1506. Who the hell are you? Helen turned to the person behind her as she sensed the cold sensation on her neck. She had just focused all of her attention on the Tao integration stage, super mighty figures, and didn't think that someone would be able to sneak up on her. What kind of terrifying ability did this require? She immediately determined that this was a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. Don't worry about who I am. Let it go right now. The man behind her spoke in a cold voice as his evil-slaying sword glowed with a bone-chilling light. In front of Empress Helen, Ada stared blankly at the man behind Helen with her beautiful eyes wide open. Jean Ling and Jean Yao were also dumbstruck, and they instantly forgot to struggle. Jean Yao blinked incessantly as if her eyes were playing tricks on her, and the next instant, tears began to flow from her eyes. Wah, holy leader, is that you? And Lin? Jean Ling murmured to herself. And Lin, he was just about to pretend to be mysterious, but why did they just say his name? Helen's body shuddered, and her inky black eyes contracted in that instant. And Lin's evil-slaying sword also fell at this instant, choosing to strike the exact moment when Helen's heart was pounding. A split second of carelessness from her enemy could very well cost her life. The evil-slaying sword was a divine tool that was extremely sharp. Helen managed to come to her senses and just barely mustered the power within her body to defend herself, but her defenses were still instantly sliced through by the evil-slaying sword before decapitating her. Blood splattered through the air. Her head flew into the sky, where Helen's astonished expression remained. However, before Lin had a chance to do anything else, he heard three muffled groans erupt. The three beautiful women who had been bound by the black sleeve all threw up blood at the same time. Their bodies had been punctured by the black blades materialized by the sleeve. There were over 100 of these sharp blades. Lin immediately activated his holy vermilion flame to incinerate the inky black sleeve. Ada, Jean Ling, and Jean Yao fell to the ground with wounds riddled all over their bodies. Are you all right? And Lin's expression shifted. He didn't think that Helen would have more tricks up her sleeve, and he immediately stepped forward to unleash a healing spell technique beside the triplets. Their vitality was extremely weak, and it was obvious that they had been tortured badly before. Coupled with 100 blades piercing through their bodies, it was very likely that they wouldn't be able to hold on. Don't worry about us, holy leader. Be careful of Helen. Ada gritted her teeth and forced herself to speak. And Lin seemed to have sensed something, and he turned toward Helen's body, only to find that there was no trace of her aside from a puddle of blood. In the blink of an eye, a black shadow had already appeared 1,000 meters away. Helen's features were a little pale, and she stared at Lin with an extremely grave expression. Return to void stage, aura, fluctuations, doubt integration stage power. And Lin, you really are Lin. Right at this moment, many cultivators also noticed what was happening in Helen's battle ring. Many of the younger cultivators were still in a daze, but some of the cultivators who had lived for over 100 years were trembling as they stared at that familiar figure and that familiar face. He was a legendary figure, a monster who had once dominated the entire continent's media and legendary stories. Now, it was as if he had traveled through time and come back to life. Am I seeing things? He's Lin? White robe, inky black longsword, and that face. There's no mistaking it. It's him. How could this be? The heavenly human tribe had mobilized all of their forces to fight to the death, and even powerful reinforcements had arrived in their dire straits. All of this was still within the realm of possibility. But now, even the dead had come back to life to help them defeat their enemies. This was way too ridiculous. Smoke was rising from the graves of their ancestors. Countless cultivators were astonished and confused. This time, even the Blood Tribe and Void Spirit Tribe were given a fright. And Lin's name was renowned throughout the entire continent, especially for the Blood Tribe powerful beings. And Lin was even more of an intimidating character. After all, Lin had once turned their holy land upside down and led a bunch of top-rate return to Void Stage mighty figures in a rebellion. He had defeated 2 emperors and several dozen return to Void Stage mighty figures in a row. Even now, they couldn't help but feel chills run down their spines whenever they thought of that monstrous feat. It can't be him. Didn't he die 100 years ago? The dead can't come back to life. A Blood Tribe powerful being yelled in an attempt to repress the horror in his heart. Emperor Changsheng's body trembled with excitement at the sight of Lin, and he was unable to maintain his composure for the first time. Lin, is that you? Emperor Changsheng's voice was trembling and a little hoarse as an expression of incredulity appeared on his face. Lin turned to look at the cultivators on the city wall with a bright smile on his face, which was like a ray of sunshine. He nodded. It's me. I'm back. He's back. His voice wasn't very loud. However, it was clearly audible to the millions of cultivators around him. It was as heavy as a divine mountain. It really was him. He really was back. Many cultivators felt as if a ball of flames had been ignited in their hearts. The man who had created miracles over and over again had suddenly returned, giving them an extremely special feeling. It was as if they could see hope as long as he was around. After all, Lin's legendary feats were all about making the impossible possible. So he's the true sect leader of the 9 immortal sect. Sect leader Lin can even jump out his coffin to fight. What reason do we have to back down? That's right. He's our role model. We can't let ourselves be left behind. Charge, charge. The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army's morale was greatly boosted once again as they slaughtered their enemies in a frenzy. Charge! Even Emperor Changsheng roared with glee as he activated the power of the formation to slaughter the Blood Tribe and Void Spirit Tribe, living beings, on the city wall. Emperor Beixing was being held back by the Starfire battleship, and Helen had been forced into retreat by Lin. Now that there was only Yi Deng left, he could finally catch his breath. So what if you're back? Even if you've come back to life, I can still make you die again. Empress Helen stepped forward and charged toward Lin. The shattered cloud dress was repaired by the power of the divine Tao, and a pair of cloud sleeves pierced through space before hurtling toward Lin at an extremely fast speed. Helen's attacks were extremely fast, but Lin wasn't underestimating his opponent at all. In the instant that Helen had attacked, he had already unleashed his origin energy of the netherworld, fire god mode, and star vein divine technique at the same time. At the same time, his eyes turned snowy white. He evaded Helen's sleeves with extremely intricate movement techniques before unleashing his wind sword technique to charge toward the oncoming Helen at an extremely fast speed. Helen stomped her black boots onto the ground upon seeing this, and inky black ripples proliferated forth, making the ground inky black and as smooth as a mirror. Lotus Dance sleeves. She turned around, and her sleeves danced through the air like dragons and snakes as she continued to pounce toward Enlin. So fast, Enlin was given a fright, and he immediately cut himself with his sword. Chapter 15:07. Crimson blood splattered onto the inky black blade of the sword. At this moment, Helen's sleeves were already flying toward Enlin, with killing intent surging from her body. She was even faster than Enlin in his triple buff state. Enlin didn't evade. Streams of wind revolved around his evil slaying sword, and at the same time, his extremely powerful consciousness was imbued with his evil slaying sword, which swept through the air toward Helen's neck. He was going to kill Helen again. Even Tao, integration stage blood tribe cultivators with freakishly powerful life forces would eventually reach a tipping point, and even a god would perish once they passed that tipping point. Furthermore, this sword strike that had been imbued with the power of his blood and consciousness would perhaps be even more effective. A hint of ferocity appeared on Helen's face upon seeing that Enlin was completely unfazed by her counterattack. No one dared to look down on her in her dancing lotus state. The smooth, inky black ground that had already been assimilated by her divine Tao was her stage. She was the only scenery between heaven and earth as she danced on the stage, and everyone paled in comparison to her. She tapped her foot lightly into the ground and twisted her waist. Her black dress fluttered in the wind, and her slender body slanted to the side like a phantom. Enlin's wind sword was about to miss its target, but it suddenly changed its trajectory in mid-air. Helen's expression shifted drastically. What kind of insane reaction speed was required to keep up with her dance? "You're courting death." She harumphed coldly as her sleeves reached Enlin's back. Enlin's sword fell without any hesitation, tearing through Helen's black dress and slashing a gash into her shoulder. At the same time, Helen's sleeve struck Enlin's back with devastating force. Devastating power surged forth in a frenzy. Enlin felt as if his back had been crushed by over 100 divine mountains, and his divine body was being torn apart. Even his bones were beginning to crack from the crushing force. PFFF. Enlin's blood churned as he threw up a mouthful of blood. Enlin was knocked flying for over a kilometer. Helen turned around with a disdainful smile on her face. "What an idiot. You're planning to trade Wound for Wound with me? Can you afford it?" As soon as she finished speaking, she even rather provocatively used her slender finger to scratch the wound on her shoulder, and then she stuck out her tongue to lick it. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she moaned lightly, and she seemed to be rather enjoying it. Enlin crawled up from the ground, and he couldn't help but burst into laughter upon seeing this. In Helen's eyes, she had profited greatly, but little did she know, in Enlin's eyes, she had already been killed in an instant. Helen was a little displeased to see Enlin's expression. It was obvious that she had gained the upper hand, but that man revealed such a wretched smile. How hateful! The tip of her foot stepped on the ground, and like a graceful swan, she once again swept towards Enlin. Her sleeves were as light as mist, and they carried the darkest and most despairing power as they enveloped the man not far away. Enlin merely stood on the spot and didn't move. Instead, he looked at her with an expression of anticipation and victory in his eyes, which made her feel even more uneasy. Helen thought back to Emperor Mang, who was still in a deranged state in the Blood Tribe Holy Land. He was once the most powerful holy disciple, but now his hair was completely disheveled, and he was constantly muttering to himself, "What is the ancestor? What is the Tao?" She knew that it was very likely that Enlin was behind all of this. Hence, her previous disdain toward Enlin was only a strategic one. She still took him very seriously in battle. So what was the meaning of Enlin's smile? For some reason, Helen felt like Enlin's smile was a little horrifying, and she swept her sleeves through the air before crashing toward Enlin like a dragon. Lotus Dance, Sleeves of Death. Her inky black sleeves were imbued with the power of trillions of tons as they hurtled directly toward Enlin. Even a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure would have their flesh and bones shattered if they were to take this attack head on. Bam! The power of the divine Tao surged forth for over 50 kilometers. The sleeves crashed into Lin's green turtle shell like meteorites, and the turtle shell tremored violently, but showed no signs of breaking. So hard, Helen's expression shifted slightly. The unease in the blood tribe Empress heart became more and more intense. Lin could evade and retaliate, but he chose to defend in the most cowardly manner possible. What was he waiting for? Thump! Her heart suddenly began to beat very quickly. The blood in her entire body began to churn for some reason. This was a type of destruction brought about by extreme exercise and refinement. Empress Helen's face was flushed, and her chest rose and fell violently. She clasped a hand over her heart, and her eyes alternated between clear and unfocused. This power, I feel like every single cell in my body has been activated. She stared at Lin with astonishment on her face. You? What did you do to me? With a triumphant smile on his face, he looked at the woman before him, whose face was so red that she couldn't even move. Do you want to understand the true meaning of life? He asked with a serious expression. Do you want to understand the true meaning of life? Do you want to truly be alive? The holy blood will give you the answer. Helen faltered momentarily before recalling how Lin had slashed himself with his sword, and her pupils contracted drastically. So it's your blood? You poison your blood? No, I didn't. My blood itself is poisonous. And Lin chuckled coldly. Helen let loose another delicate cry, and her breathing accelerated. A peculiar flush appeared on her snowy white skin, and her entire body trembled as if she were resisting some kind of special power. The first time always hurts a little, but you'll learn to enjoy it in the future. And Lin offered words of consolation with a smile. Helen, Tao integration stage blood tribe mighty figures were no idiots, and they were naturally aware of the special properties of Lin's blood. That type of blood was extremely pure, and it was capable of making the blood in one's entire body churn and tremble. This was the power of destruction. If one didn't die in destruction, then they would be reborn in this destruction. Helen's delicate cry was intermingled with a hint of seduction. She bowed slightly, and her long legs were pressed together as she gripped her chest with her hands. Her skin was a little moist, and she was sweating profusely. From Lin's perspective, he could even see a pair of snowy white breasts trembling gently beneath Yun Shang's collar. On the city wall, all of the cultivators who were paying close attention to Lin's battle were a little confused and astonished. Lin and Helen's battle is so strange. They only exchanged a few blows before suddenly stopping. Empress Helen looks like she's in a lot of pain. Has she been cursed? Why does it look like Helen is feeling a little good? No, it should be ecstasy. What the hell is sect leader Lin doing? Regardless of what everyone was saying, Lin had managed to hold off Helen, and that was already a massive turnaround for both sides. The Kingdom of the Nine States United Army was beginning to gain the upper hand on both sides. Su Xiaolan stood atop the phoenix and looked down at the ecstatic Helen, as well as Lin, who wore a wide smile on his face. Even though she knew what they were doing, her lips still twitched involuntarily. Chapter 1508. What the hell? Can't they just have a proper battle? What a bunch of crooked tricks. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips with a disdainful expression. She couldn't help but grumble before continuing to chase the heavenly human tribe great generals on her phoenix. The remaining 6 heavenly human tribe great generals were no longer as calm and collected as they had been. Prior to Lin's appearance, they could still see a glimmer of hope for victory and informed the heavenly human tribe on the northern front to take advantage of the divine Phoenix Maiden's presence to crush the northern defensive line before taking over from the southern front. If both the northern and southern fronts are destroyed, the Kingdom of the Nine States would basically be over. After all, they held a slight advantage in terms of top-tier combat prowess, and they might even be able to secure victory after a fierce battle. However, Lin had suddenly appeared and held Helen at bay, thereby instantly turning the tables on them. With none of the Tao integration stage mighty figures able to provide a breakthrough point, the heavenly human tribe's chances of winning this battle were becoming extremely slim. Let's retreat for now. A heavenly human tribe great general wore a resigned expression. We still haven't completed our mission, and we're just going to leave like this? Another great general was clearly unwilling to give up. Heavenly Goddess Lane, you would be even more enraged if our army were to be destroyed here than if we failed our mission, a mighty great general said expressionlessly. After a brief discussion between the 6 great generals, strange music began to play on the battlefield. The music was imbued with reluctance to part, and it was like clouds and mist before falling like a torrential storm. All of the heavenly human tribe, blood tribe, and void spirit tribe cultivators understood what was going on. All of the blood tribe and void spirit tribe cultivators on the city wall faltered slightly as incredulity appeared on their faces. It was clearly a massacre not long ago, and it was a one-sided battle. But now, they were actually going to retreat in a defeated manner? The heavenly human tribe great generals held the highest authority on the battlefield, so they weren't going to question this situation. They were just finding it very difficult to accept this reality. In contrast, the 3 million cultivators were reinvigorated, and the blood in their bodies churned as they fought even more ferociously. All of them knew that as long as they continued to fight, victory was going to be theirs. Outside the city wall, and Lin raised his arms and yelled, "Don't let them get away! They've killed so many of our comrades and citizens of the Kingdom of the 9 States, so we have to kill them all. Kill them." The cultivators were also filled with bloodlust. Originally, they were fighting with the determination to die. Now that they found a chance to completely annihilate the enemy, how could they miss this opportunity? The negative emotions from before were vented in an instant, and the target was the enemy in front of him. The 3 million cultivators all turned into ferocious men as they furiously slaughtered the enemies before them. The pitch-black ground of the city wall became dark red. Countless streams of blood flowed down the wall, and some of them even flowed along the wall, dyeing the entire wall that stretched for thousands of miles red. Slaughter, blood, and misery were still the main themes here. The battles between Return to Void stage mighty figures were even more intense. Regardless of whether it was in terms of quantity or quality, the Return to Void stage mighty figures on both sides were completely crushed. The 3 holy disciples at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias, were wielding weapons that were stained within Lin's blood. As long as their enemy wasn't a Return to Void final stage mighty figure, they would die for sure. Thus, the 16 Blood Tribe Return to Void stage mighty figures were quickly annihilated by the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army. Of the 13 Void Spirit Tribe Return to Void stage mighty figures, 12 had perished. The remaining Void Spirit Tribe mighty figure at the Return to Void pinnacle stage had unleashed his extreme void evasion and escaped. 260 soul-piercing stage heavenly human tribe powerful beings were all cut up like vegetables by the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army, especially the Return to Void stage mighty figures of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. Just Tina alone slew over 20 soul-piercing stage heavenly human tribe powerful beings. In the end, there were still 20 soul-piercing stage heavenly humans who managed to escape the battlefield. But before they could heave a sigh of relief, a stream of starfire suddenly approached them from behind like a long river. That was the core cannon of the Starfire battleship, the Starfire Annihilation Cannon. All of the soul-piercing stage heavenly humans were killed amid blood-curdling cries. After the Return to Void stage enemies were wiped out, several dozen Return to Void stage mighty figures of the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army joined in on the battle. Their participation was a devastating disaster for the enemy army. One had to realize that a Return to Void stage mighty figure could flatten a mountain with a wave of their hand. Slaying hundreds of living beings with a single attack was a piece of cake for them. Several dozen Return to Void stage mighty figures joined the battle on the ground, and tens of thousands of Blood Tribe, Heavenly Human Tribe, and Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings perished every second. The situation on the battlefield was ever-changing. Sometimes, the scales of victory would tilt in favor of one another, while other times, the army would be routed in the blink of an eye. This time, the enemy army was beginning to flee. Su Xiaolan still remembered in Lin's words, and she patted the phoenix's back. Little Huang, activate the Great Heaven Incinerating Cage formation. Don't let them get away. Chirp. A hesitant expression appeared on the phoenix's face. It was quite clear that using the Great Heaven Incinerating Cage formation would be extremely taxing on its energy, and it was a little concerned about that. Listen to me. We have to win this battle with flying colors, Su Xiaolan said in a gentle voice. The phoenix hesitated momentarily before spreading its wings, upon which a scintillating light erupted from its body. Oh, is little Huang also born in the year of the sun? Xiao Hong was a little excited at the sight of the phoenix's extremely pure flame power. Right at this moment, countless streaks of divine flames suddenly fell from the phoenix's body. They fell in a semicircular formation over 1,000 kilometers away, forming a massive net. At a rough glance, there were over 100,000 streaks of divine flames. The streaks of divine flames exploded violently upon crashing into the ground, upon which the flames quickly spread and fused with the surrounding flames to form a gargantuan wall of flames. This wall of flames had completely sealed off all avenues of retreat for the enemy army of over 10 million. The living beings at the very back of the army had already gotten close to the wall of flames, but before they could even get close, they were reduced to wisps of smoke by the terrifying scorching temperatures. This was the Phoenix's Great Heaven Incinerating Cage formation, which encompassed a radius of over 1,000 kilometers. This was a massive cage constructed from divine flames. This cage was powerful enough to incinerate the heavens. How could the army on the ground, which wasn't even at the return to void stage, break through the Phoenix's divine flame cage formation? All of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings had the ability to fly. Faint smiles appeared on their faces as they tried to escape through the air. After all, there was a wall of flames on the ground, but there wasn't one in the air. The flames couldn't fly into the sky, could they? However, when several thousand heavenly human tribe powerful beings flew through the wall of flames at the same time, the divine flame realm was suddenly triggered by some kind of power, and the flames shot into the heavens like arrows, incinerating one heavenly human tribe powerful being after another. The heavenly human tribe powerful beings howled with anguish in the air, and all of them were incinerated to death. This time, it was the heavenly human tribe, blood tribe, and void spirit tribe living beings' turn to be struck by despair. It was quite clear that the 4-9 Immortals sect was planning to wipe them out this time. Chapter 1509. The incinerating heaven's cage of flames trapped the despairing army. Several dozen returned to void stage mighty figures led an army of 3 million cultivators through the enemy army of over 10 million, and they were like tigers pouncing on a herd of sheep. The heavenly human tribe, blood tribe, and void spirit tribe soldiers didn't give up. The heavenly human tribe had a 10,000-man formation that could just barely keep a return to void stage mighty figure at bay. Aside from that, they knew that there was still hope, but that hope lay in the hands of a Tao integration stage mighty figure. Emperor Beixing was still being held back by the Starfire battleship. Empress Helen stared at Lin with flushed features, and the atmosphere was quite peculiar. As for the 6 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals, they had already been surrounded by Su Xiaolan, Zhu Shuze, Situ Feng, and the mythological beast phoenix. However, they were even more devastated after seeing the dire situation that all of the mighty figures were in. What hope was there for them to win? They didn't even have a chance to retreat anymore. The only thing that they were thankful for was that Emperor Yi Deng of the Blood Tribe had also begun to flee into the distance. Emperor Shang didn't give chase. Instead, he continued to maintain the formation at Nanchao City as he had to protect the cultivators on the city as well as the residents behind him. Emperor Yi Deng is retreating. That's great. He's a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. He definitely has a way to break out of the Phoenix's divine flame cage. Let's follow him. Hope was reignited in the hearts of all of the enemy soldiers. However, right at this moment, an extremely petite figure appeared in Emperor Yi Deng's path of retreat. Emperor Yi Deng faltered slightly before a cruel smile appeared on his face. "A mere return to void stage, mighty figure dares to stand in my way? I'll kill you as an offering to the heavens." He was already quite displeased that he had failed in this battle. Now, even a return to void stage mighty figure from the 4-9 immortal sect was standing in his way. How could he not be enraged? Tina wielded her heart lotus ice sword, and the snowy white blade of her sword was stained with blood. "You can't leave this place." She spoke slowly as her semi-transparent golden wings flapped lightly. A peculiar divine light flashed through her green eyes, and she didn't panic in the slightest in the face of Yi Deng's blood azura divine Tao power. Divine art formless slash. She swung her sword and drew a white arc in the air. Emperor Yi Deng was just about to unleash a fist toward the little fairy before him when he suddenly felt a sense of peril engulfing his entire body. There was no sword projection, no vital energy fluctuations, and even the space before him was completely normal. However, all of a sudden, Emperor Yi Deng felt a tearing sensation on his arm. The snowy white blade of the little fairy had sliced open a shallow wound on his arm. Although the power was not great, and it was harmless, the strangeness of a spell made him shudder with fear. Rumble! His fist fell, causing the surrounding space to explode. In the nick of time, the little fairy used a spatial leap to avoid the attack. She was a fairy at the return to void pinnacle stage, but she was panting heavily, and her intricate features were a little pale. Perhaps it was due to the fact that she had expended a lot of energy just then. Emperor Yi Deng chuckled coldly. "Is this what you mean by blocking my Tao? Expending a huge amount of energy and using an inexplicable move just to scratch his arm? Provocation? A show of force? What a childish attitude." A disdainful expression appeared on Emperor Yi Deng's face. If it weren't for the fact that his top priority right now was to escape, he would definitely have given that annoying fairy a vicious beating. He ignored the fairy and continued to flee toward the south. Meanwhile, on another battlefield outside the city wall, Helen seemed to have recovered, and her breathing gradually returned to normal. However, she was unable to disguise the astonishment on her face, as if she were still in a daze. She had thought that after cultivating in the Tao of blood for over 100,000 years, fusing the blood dance and the true intent of despair as one, she had already reached the pinnacle of the Tao of blood. However, Lin's blood had opened a new door for her, the true meaning of life, to truly live. Helen's long eyelashes trembled lightly, as if she had attained enlightenment. No wonder they would betray the blood tribe and acknowledge you as their holy leader. So it was because they had a new faith and goal. Helen took a deep breath and looked at Lin as if she had seen through everything. "So, are you going to use your blood to tempt me next?" Apparently, all three of the holy disciples of the blood tribe had become this man's servants, so it was only natural that he would try to seduce her. After all, recruiting a Tao integration stage super mighty figure was something to be envied and envied. Helen was just about to say something when Lin suddenly flapped his wings of wind and hurtled toward her at an extremely fast speed, upon which his evil-slaying sword fell with a terrifying sharpness. A hint of astonishment flashed through her face. She didn't think that Lin would choose to attack her. This was completely different from what she had expected. A frosty expression instantly appeared on Helen's face, and she swept her sleeves through the air as the power of her divine Tao swept toward Lin like a black vortex that could engulf all things. However, for some reason, in the instant that she saw Lin, she suddenly didn't have the heart to attack him, as if even her own bloodline was rejecting such an action. There was only one thought reverberating through Helen's mind. Lin's blood was so pure and perfect. How could she bear to hurt him? Thus, Lin charged toward Helen without any resistance. Helen tried to evade, but Lin's evil-slaying sword had already fallen. Whoosh! The divine sword tore through Helen's cloud dress and left a bone-deep gash on her body. almost slicing her in half. And Lin's eyes were filled with emotionlessness and indifference as he looked at the astonished woman before him. Tempt you with my blood? Don't even think about it. After slaughtering so many of our brethren from the kingdom of the 9 states, you're already on my must-kill list. Helen was unable to imagine what kind of expression this was. She had clearly acknowledged Enlin from the bottom of her heart, but Enlin had given her the coldest reply. This was the feeling of heartache. Her beautiful dress was torn down the middle by the blade of the sword, and her skin was stained red with blood as the destructive power, unique to a divine tool, surged through her body. Enlin had learned his lesson this time and injected an extremely powerful destructive power into his attack in order to exhaust his opponent's freakish life force. Helen didn't have time to recover from her injuries, and she immediately turned to flee into the distance. Enlin wasn't going to let her go. He had fed her his poisonous blood in order to make her lose the ability to attack him, and now was the time to kill her. He unleashed his wings of wind and Kuin Pung travel to give chase, unleashing one dazzling sword projection after another. Helen had yet to recover from her injuries, and she didn't want to retaliate, so she could only try to evade. Not long after that, a series of wounds were inflicted on Helen's back, and her injuries were becoming more and more severe. Chapter 15:10. Ever since Helen had tasted Enlin's blood, her body had become a little strange. She didn't want to hurt Enlin. She felt like that would be disrespectful to a living being with such perfect blood. In fact, she was struck by a sense of grief and sorrow that she was being hunted down by Enlin and that she was Enlin's enemy. Why are we enemies? Can't we just be friends? Helen spoke with grief and anguish as she fled. The usually cold and emotionless beauty had tears welling up in her eyes, and she was on the verge of tears. Enlin's heart jolted with shock upon seeing this. Wasn't Empress Helen's reaction a little too intense? Was the effect of his blood that strong? All of the cultivators who were pursuing the enemy also witnessed this. All of them were astonished. Sect leader Enlin is so powerful. He's chasing after Empress Helen. He's not just powerful. I've never seen a Tao integration stage mighty figure being beaten to the point where she doesn't even dare to retaliate. As expected of sect leader Enlin. Look, Empress Helen is on the verge of tears. Gasp! How terrifying! All of the cultivators exclaimed in amazement upon seeing this. For some reason, they felt like this battle was even more exhilarating. Another resounding boom erupted in the sky. The massive battleship had already reached the air above Nanchao City, and all of its inky black cannon barrels were extremely sinister, some of which were already glowing with energy. Eat my 36,000-degree spiral cannon. An extremely youthful and energetic voice sounded from within the battleship. This was Lu Qianhuan's voice. Boom, 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 boom. Cannon fire erupted incessantly. Purple cannon blasts tore through the sky like shooting stars, rotating at an extremely high speed, causing the space around them to twist and warp. Not only were they extremely kinetic, but they were also capable of tearing through anything that approached them. Emperor Beixing looked on at the oncoming cannon blasts, which had virtually sealed off all of its escape routes. Its round body abruptly contracted, and the power of the divine Tao enshrouded all of the spikes on its body. Its body abruptly expanded as inky black spikes shot forth from its body. Sad spike, piercing heart. The sharp thorns whistled through the air, and each one accurately aimed at a cannonball. The power of distortion brought by the rotation of the cannonball could not distort the dark spikes. Fiery clouds of energy explosions bloomed in the sky. A sinister smile appeared on Emperor Beixing's face. We'll meet again someday. After saying that, a strange wind actually appeared on its round and bulging body. Beifeng, the wind is tight, retreat. Whoosh! The wind carried Emperor Beixing into the distance. Don't run. Lu Qianhuan yelled upon seeing this, and the Starfire battleship's cannons rumbled as it blasted relentlessly toward Emperor Beixing. However, Emperor Beixing's movement techniques were extremely agile, and he was able to unleash his divine Tao as he fled, allowing him to widen the distance between them. The Starfire battleship was only suited for defense and strategic offense. It would be too difficult for it to chase down a Tao integration stage mighty figure who was determined to escape. After all, it was not very agile. At the same time, a beam of light descended from the sky and enveloped the 6 heavenly humans who were surrounded. The guidance of the heavenly Tao has already descended. How are you going to stop us from leaving? A great general looked at Su Xiaolan and the others with a disdainful expression. In this world, all beings who dare to oppose the heavens will die a tragic death. A mocking expression appeared on another great general's face. This temporary victory will only make you struggle on the brink of death for a little longer. The 6 heaven pioneer stage mighty figures reverted to their high and mighty states, and they looked down at the super mighty figures who had surrounded them like gods looking down upon ants in this world. An indignant expression appeared on Zhu Shu's face at the sight of the golden light descending from the sky. Damn it, it's that light again. The light of guidance was imbued with the laws of the heavenly Tao and could keep all external powers at bay. It was the favorite method of escape for Heaven Pioneer Stage heavenly humans, and it could be unleashed by at least 5 Heaven Pioneer Stage great generals at once. Even Tao integration stage attacks wouldn't be able to harm them in the slightest, and they could only look on helplessly as they attempted to teleport away. Even though heaven-crushing techniques could break through the laws of the heavens, and they had all cultivated heaven-crushing techniques, they were still not powerful enough to break through the light of guidance. Just as they were at their wits' end, a bolt of golden lightning imbued with boundless divine might tore through space with a dazzling golden light. It instantly covered several hundred kilometers before landing on the light of guidance. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. The light of guidance actually cracked under the bombardment of the golden lightning. The 6 Heaven Pioneer Stage great generals were dumbstruck. Zhu Shuza and Situfeng were also dumbstruck. They turned with difficulty to discover a white-robed figure chasing after Helen in the extremely far distance, and there seemed to be residual lightning still lingering on his fingertips. Did he do that? Zhu Shuza was still in a daze. Even the Heaven Pioneer Stage great generals were in complete disbelief. Their usually tranquil expressions were now trembling uncontrollably, as if they were facing a tsunami. Who? Who is he? Is he a human? How can he use the heavenly technique? One of the heavenly human tribe great generals didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before Su Xiaolan took advantage of everyone's distraction to slay him again. Zhu Shuza and Situfeng also came to their senses, and they immediately surrounded the Heaven Pioneer Stage heavenly human tribe great generals. 5 Heaven Pioneer Stage heavenly human tribe great generals were no match for 4 Tao integration stage super mighty figures. The heavens were instantly shattered, and a pure white rain of blood rained down upon the world. All of the Heaven Pioneer Stage heavenly human tribe great generals had fallen. Emperor Yi Dang's face turned deathly pale upon seeing this, and he fled even more quickly. However, all of a sudden, all of the blood in his body began to churn as a destructive power wreaked havoc within his body. What? Emperor Yi Dang didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before he let loose an involuntary cry. At the border of the Phoenix Cage, Empress Helen was riddled with wounds, and her aura had also become extremely feeble. Her beautiful features were stained with blood, and a few strands of long black hair were plastered to her sweaty cheeks. She dragged her battered body along as she ran with grief and humiliation in her eyes, creating a rather poignant sight to behold. She had already been slashed over 10,000 times by Lin, and she was on the brink of death over a dozen times. In the end, she was still able to forcibly recover from her injuries through her insane life force, and continue to run. Lotus Dance sleeve strike. She waved her sleeve through the air, blasting a massive hole into the wall of flames that threatened to incinerate the entire heavens. No, I can't let you get away at this point. And Lin heaved a forlorn sigh upon seeing this as he flipped his evil slaying sword over. All of a sudden, heaven and earth lost all color. Helen suddenly discovered that she was situated in a realm of absolute darkness that had no sense of space. She was all alone in the darkness, and boundless horror washed over her like a tidal wave. Her eyes widened as she instinctively defended herself with all her might. Helen didn't have much energy left, and her body was also on the brink of collapse. At this moment, a voice sounded beside her ear. Evil sword technique, eternal night. Helen's blood-curdling cries reverberated throughout the boundless darkness. On a battlefield riddled with scars, all of the living beings were still engaged in fierce battle. It was clearly daytime in the sky, but dark clouds suddenly appeared over an area with a radius of over 1,500 kilometers. This was a phenomenon that could only occur after a Tao integration stage super mighty figure had perished. Su Xiaolan had initially said that she hadn't seen this phenomenon, which was why she was convinced that Enlin hadn't perished. However, Enlin and the others had all lost their vital signs, and their jade badges of life had shattered. Everyone thought that the heavenly time god had killed Enlin through some special method, which was why no phenomenon had occurred. On the battlefield, the great Tao suddenly erupted as a black rain of blood fell, as if the heavens were sobbing. The black rain of blood was imbued with the highest true intent of the Tao of blood. Even if one didn't cultivate in the Tao of blood, they would still be able to attain a deeper understanding of life. This was Empress Helen's final reciprocation to heaven and earth before her divine Tao crumbled. An indescribable sense of grief welled up in the hearts of almost all of the living beings, as if they had lost something extremely important. Heaven and earth mourned the death of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Chapter 15:11. Almost all of the living beings present couldn't help but turn toward a certain direction. There, a white-robed man stood with a sword in his hand, bathed in a rain of blood. He was very quiet, but he was imbued with an extremely terrifying sense of intimidation. Empress Helen, who was being pursued, had already disappeared. However, everyone else knew that the Blood Race Emperor, who had once ruled over a region, had most likely fallen here. Heaven and earth mourned the death of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. All of the Blood Tribe cultivators were struck by an overwhelming sense of grief, and tears flowed from their eyes. Ada, Jin Ling, and Jin Yao were enemies, but they still couldn't help but shed tears at the sight of the rain of blood falling from the sky. Helen was their former master, so how could they not have any feelings for her? However, due to the fact that they pursued different Taos, they had no choice but to fight one another, and some of them even had a waterfall. The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army was also struck by a sense of grief, mainly because they had been infected by the grief of the great Tao of heaven and earth. So this is what happens when a Tao integration stage super mighty figure falls. This is the first time I've seen something like this. Yi Ling stopped in her tracks, and her bright eyes reflected the rain of blood falling from the sky. Xin Yuan Cheng extended a hand to catch the falling rainwater. Each and every drop of blood falling from the sky seems to contain a story, as well as Helen's observation of Tao. Her Tao has been scattered throughout the world, but it has also fallen upon all living beings in this world, so it has not truly disappeared. Su Qinya nodded. This must be a special type of inheritance. It's like falling flowers aren't heartless things, and it's like they've been turned into mud to protect the flowers. Dabai's eyes lit up with a scorching light. I thought it was already very terrifying that Big Brother and was able to chase Empress Helen away, but who would have thought that he would actually be able to slay her? That was a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Woof. If a Tao integration stage super mighty figure wanted to escape, it would be very difficult to kill them. However, Enlin had managed to make Helen the first Tao integration stage super mighty figure to fall on this battlefield. Regardless of whether it was the Blood Tribe, Void Spirit Tribe, or Heavenly Human Tribe, all of them were in even greater despair. The Kingdom of the 9 States United Army seemed to have been injected with adrenaline again, and they continued to slaughter their enemies trapped within the Great Heaven incinerating cage formation. The situation had changed too quickly. All of the heavenly human tribe, great generals and great generals had perished, and all of the blood tribe and void spirit tribe mighty figures had perished aside from one who managed to escape. Now, they had even lost a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure, and the heavenly human tribe united army was on the verge of collapse. Emperor Yi Deng was truly given a fright. He had just been tortured by a certain type of blood, and now Empress Helen had fallen. One had to realize that Helen was even more powerful than him. How could he still remain calm? Without any hesitation, he turned around and ran. At this moment, Tina took out a small vial with a smile on her face. The vial was filled with blood. She opened the bottle and smiled. "Don't go. I have Saint blood here. Don't you want to drink it? As long as you don't run away, I promise to let you drink it." The fresh blood emitted a tempting fluctuation. Emperor Yi Deng was still fine if he hadn't come into contact with this kind of blood. However, once he came into contact with holy blood, he became extremely sensitive to its fluctuations. No, he could not turn back. It was obvious that it was a trap. She must be doing this in order to stall me. Emperor Yi Deng roared in his heart, but his footsteps faltered involuntarily. He turned to look at the small vial in Tina's hand with a scorching light in his eyes, and he swallowed silently. The allure of the holy blood was far greater than he had imagined. One had to realize that Emperor Mang had been driven to the brink of insanity by accepting the holy blood and becoming Enlin's servant, as well as maintaining his pride and composure. Even the most powerful holy disciple had been seduced into such a miserable state by the holy blood. So how could Emperor Yi Deng still have that kind of self-control? Right at this moment, Yi Deng's footsteps faltered. Dark clouds suddenly appeared in the sky nearby, and golden void lightning began to wreak havoc. It's tribulation clouds, and it's golden void lightning. My God, did someone just break through to the return to void stage? All of the cultivators let loose cries of surprise upon seeing this. They turned their eyes toward a certain direction, where a red-robed blood tribe cultivator was battling with a ferocious expression on his face. Ha ha ha! I can die with no regrets. He knew that he wouldn't be able to escape, but he was still very happy. To be able to break through to the return to void stage and witness the glory of the return to void stage while he was still alive was a very fortunate thing. Did he attain enlightenment after Empress Helen's death? A blood tribe cultivator seemed to have sensed something, and he speculated with an envious expression. All of a sudden, the blood tribe cultivator became the center of attention on the battlefield. Ha ha ha! Kleist, go ahead and transcend your tribulation. We'll protect you, and even if you die, we'll make you the new mighty figure of our blood tribe. A blood tribe cultivator wielding a pair of axes chortled with glee. That's right. Don't worry and transcend your tribulation. Another blood tribe female cultivator stood beside the male cultivator. Many blood tribe cultivators surrounded Kleist like stars surrounding the moon. They had given up on escaping in order to protect that dazzling moment of glory. Kleist was extremely touched. Thank you, everyone. Boom! Golden void lightning tore through space above the tribulation clouds and began to fall. A heroic expression appeared on Kleist's face. Come! The golden void lightning roared toward Kleist's head, but it suddenly turned in midair before crashing down upon the axe-wielding blood tribe cultivator. Boom! The blood tribe cultivator's entire body was charred black, and the golden void lightning threatened to tear apart every inch of his skin. He slowly turned to look at Kleist with a blank expression. Kleist was also completely dumbfounded. The axe-wielding blood tribe cultivator's face was filled with incredulity, and his eyes rolled over into the back of his head before he even had a chance to finish his sentence. His body fell backward, and his life force was severed. All of the surrounding blood tribe cultivators were given a huge fright upon seeing this. The heavenly tribulation didn't strike Kleist, but struck the powerful cultivator beside him instead. What the hell was going on? Just as they were in shock and bewilderment, a second bolt of golden void lightning fell with boundless might. Kleist was just about to defend himself against the tribulation lightning when the bolt of divine lightning began to turn again before crashing down upon one of the blood tribe female cultivators beside him. Boom! The female cultivator's body was reduced to charcoal amid a sharp cry. Kleist, all of the blood tribe cultivators, uncanny, terrifying, and incomprehensible. He had never seen a tribulation whose lightning tribulation could bend in the middle of a tribulation. Are you AF *King Loner or something? At this moment, the third bolt of golden void lightning had already fallen. This time, its target was not Kleist, but instead, it was a blood tribe cultivator closest to him. This blood tribe cultivator was also at the soul formation pinnacle stage, and he roared as he unleashed a crimson shield to defend himself. He was very powerful, and he had the power to defend himself against this bolt of divine lightning. However, right before everyone's astonished eyes, the power of the golden void lightning suddenly became significantly more powerful as it descended. Boom! The golden void lightning tore through the crimson shield and reduced the blood tribe cultivator at the soul formation pinnacle stage to charcoal. Kleist would never forget the expression of rage and resentment in his opponent's eyes as he died. It was as if he was saying, "I'm trying to protect you out of the goodness of my heart, but you're using divine lightning to strike me." All of the blood tribe cultivators who had volunteered to protect Kleist silently distanced themselves from him. Some wore expressions of disdain, some wore expressions of loathing, and some were even enraged. No! Kleist felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a sword upon seeing this. At the same time, his face was filled with confusion. What the hell was going on? Chapter 15:12. Kleist's return to Void Stage Tribulation Transcendence was the focal point of the entire battlefield. The fact that he could make a turn during his tribulation naturally fell into the eyes of many living beings. It had to be said, this really did give many people a fright. After recovering from their initial shock, the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army was ecstatic. In contrast, the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was grief-stricken, and their morale had plummeted to a freezing point. It was rare for an ally to transcend a tribulation, so they should at least make their battle a little more heroic. But now, the lightning from their allies' heavenly tribulation had actually struck their own people. What the hell was going on? This was a severe blow to morale. The one who suffered the most was Kleist. It wasn't easy for him to say such inspiring words as, "I can die in peace if I hear the Tao in the morning." But now, he didn't even have the chance to hear the Tao. The divine lightning had gone to strike their ally. His face had been obliterated by the divine lightning. This was supposed to be the pinnacle of his life, but everything had changed in an instant. He was wondering if the heavens were playing a prank on him by purposely striking the divine lightning in the wrong direction. Now, Kleist had become the center of attention for even more people, making him even more dazzling. The only unfortunate thing was that there didn't seem to be anyone willing to stand guard for him anymore. All of them had fled far away. After all, dying on the battlefield and being struck by divine lightning were two completely different things. He was here to protect him, only to be struck by divine lightning. No living being in their right mind would accept such an insane way to die. Kleist's heart was crushed. The fourth bolt of heavenly lightning fell, and then it continued to make a turn to strike a blood tribe expert who was in the midst of escaping. No! The blood tribe, powerful being, roared with grief and indignation as tears welled up in his eyes. He had already run several hundred meters away, so why was the golden void lightning still striking him? Thus, another blood tribe, powerful being, was struck to death by divine lightning. Many people were struck by an indescribable sense of fear upon seeing this. It was as if this was the final straw that crushed the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army's morale. Everyone said that the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was doomed, but this was far too complete. Even the divine lightning of their ally was striking their ally. Kleist was also in despair. He didn't even know how to struggle or resist. He could only stand there in a daze, looking up at the thunder in the sky. He felt that his life had ended in such a ridiculous way. This time, when he transcended the tribulation, He had hoped that there would still be people who would remember his tragic and heroic appearance in the final battle after his death, so that he could leave behind his own legend in the world. But now, yes, now he might be even more famous. He could be considered to be the founder of tribulation transcendence. This was the first time in the history of the Tai Chu continent that he had triggered tribulation lightning to strike his own people. In a sense, this tribulation transcendence cultivator from Kleist was going to leave an even more illustrious mark on the Tai Chu continent than he had imagined. The fifth bolt of heavenly lightning struck down, killing yet another vampire compatriot. The divine phoenix maiden stood proudly in the air, and she pursed her lips as she looked down at the sly smile on Enlin's face. What a bad taste! She knew that Enlin had the ability to control lightning, so she immediately thought of him. Now that she saw his despicable expression, she knew that she had guessed correctly. Not only her, but many other cultivators also slowly came to their senses. A name that had once resounded throughout the entire continent began to surface in their minds. The Lord of Transcendence. He was a legendary figure who had more than doubled the success rate of tribulation transcendence cultivators across the entire continent with his unfathomable lightning manipulation techniques. If he could use divine lightning to make you stronger, then he could also use divine lightning to destroy you. Many cultivators began to turn toward the white figure with even more respect and admiration in their eyes. Kleist was on the brink of mental breakdown as he watched his divine lightning strike down one blood tribe cultivator after another. However, he also seemed to have realized something after a short while, and he turned toward Enlin. It was as if everything had suddenly become clear to him, but there was still uncontrollable hatred in his eyes. So it's you. So it's you? I'm going to kill you. Ah! Kleist charged toward Enlin and yelled in a frenzy. Enlin shook his head lightly at the sight of the oncoming man. At this moment, another bolt of golden void lightning fell from the tribulation clouds, crashing down upon Kleist. This time, it didn't turn. Instead, its power became extremely terrifying as it fell. Its power easily tore apart the void, and its light illuminated the world. Kleist was given a massive fright, but his fighting spirit was immediately reignited, and he chortled with glee. Come on, heavenly tribulation, show me your power. Boom! The golden void lightning fell and instantly tore through Kleist's defenses, charring him to a crisp. There was still a heroic smile on Kleist's face, but his vitality had been completely severed, and his tragic life had come to an end. When the tribulation lightning that he had been yearning for finally fell, he didn't even manage to withstand a single bolt. This was an extremely heartbreaking ending. Enlin shook his head. I gave the golden void lightning a hack, and you can't even handle it. You're such a noob. During his tribulation transcendence, his tribulation lightning often gave him extra drama, and now he could finally let others experience what it felt like to be in the presence of golden void lightning. All of the other Heavenly Human Tribe United Army soldiers were filled with grief at the sight of Kleist's fate. At this moment, Emperor Yi Deng, who had been seduced by the holy blood, was surrounded by Su Xiaolan, Zhu Shuza, and Situ Feng from the Vermilion Bird sect, and he was also in dire straits. Wah! Wah! See you again. Emperor Bei Xing burst into laughter and sobs as it crashed through the great heaven incinerating cage formation. It was extremely fast, and all of the Dao integration stage mighty figures present were unable to stop it. All they could do was surround Emperor Yi Deng, who was completely immobilized. The formation had been broken, and heaven and earth were right before its eyes. However, in the instant that it escaped from the cage, a white figure appeared above its head, and it held a divine seal that encompassed heaven and earth in its hand, which was exuding a paramount divine light, as if it were a divine mountain that could crush all worlds. Celestial Arch Seal, Realm Sealing Palm. A voice imbued with the might of the heavens descended from the heavens. Emperor Bei Xing's entire body was enshrouded by the Celestial Arch Seal, and it was struck by the feeling that it had nowhere to run. All of the spikes on its body sprang up as it screeched, Heavens! Before it even had a chance to finish its sentence, The celestial arch seal, which encompassed an area of over 10,000 meters, crashed into Emperor Beishing's body as if it had struck a rubber ball, and all of its spikes were bent or snapped. Energy erupted forth in a ring for several hundred kilometers. An extremely terrifying sealing power crushed Emperor Beishing into the ground with unstoppable force. Millions of living beings stared blankly at the figure in the imperial robe. This was a man who should have died, but he had come back to life. This was the man who was revered as the most powerful being in the kingdom of the 9 states, and the mighty being who had founded the celestial court. Tears streamed down Emperor Changsheng's face upon seeing this figure. Celestial Arch, you're finally back. Chapter 15:13. The Heavenly Emperor's appearance alarmed everyone on the battlefield. Almost everyone turned toward the man who had suppressed Emperor Beishing with his palm. At this moment, his figure was more dazzling than anyone else on the field. He's the Celestial Emperor? A young man in his 20s stared blankly at the proud and imposing figure. The man's expression remained unchanged even in the face of the Tao integration stage, Emperor Beishing. His expression was as calm as still water and as mighty as a mountain. All of this caused the young man to be unable to help but feel deep veneration. Even after 100 years, the legend of the Heavenly Emperor still reverberated like thunder. Even now, as they fought, they were still fantasizing about how great it would be if the Sky Emperor had not died. At the very least, this war would not have been so difficult. Now his dream had come true. The Celestial Arch had really returned, and as soon as he returned, he did so with lightning speed. Roar! Celestial Arch, you're not dead. Emperor Beishing struggled on the ground, but it was unable to break free from the Celestial Thearch's grasp. Yeah, did I disappoint you? A smile appeared on the Celestial Thearch's face, but his palm slowly pressed downward without any hesitation. The massive palm that covered an area of several dozen kilometers was like a divine mountain that was constantly increasing in weight. Rumble, the ground began to cave in. Emperor Beishing's round, ball-like body was flattened into the shape of a pancake, and cracks began to appear on its inky black body, clearly indicating that it had been wounded. At this moment, its entire body wriggled. Suddenly, a small wooden sculpture in the shape of a skull slowly emerged from its body. A vast and lofty power of chaos, as if it was before the beginning of the world, was released from the wooden sculpture. The Celestial Thearch's expression turned cold. Clearly, he knew about this thing. Divine tool, heaven-splitting skeleton, unleash my power. Emperor Beishing chortled with glee as the vast power of the divine Tao within its body was absorbed by the heaven-splitting skeleton. Its body was getting weaker and weaker, but the fluctuations emitted by the skeleton were getting stronger and stronger. Heaven-splitting, Emperor Beishing roared. The eyes of the small wooden sculpture in the shape of a skeleton man suddenly turned red, and it moved on its own. He gripped the void with one hand, and a beam of red light shot out from the chaos, tearing through the void for hundreds of kilometers before slashing down toward the Celestial Thearch's Celestial Arch seal. Wah! The red light split heaven and earth. The indescribable sharpness carried along the true meaning of the Tao that could split apart everything, slashing everything in the world into pieces. All of the living beings in the distance felt their heartbeats speed up and their eyes stung. Even their breathing stopped due to the tension. This was the true heaven-splitting technique. It could destroy all obstructions, and even the primal chaos could be destroyed. The heaven-splitting skeleton only possessed 1% of the heaven-splitting technique's true intent, but it was already terrifying to the extreme. The Heavenly Arch seal, which contained vast heavenly might, was completely split in half by this slash. Emperor Beishing had paid such a heavy price to break through the Celestial Thearch's spell technique, and it didn't dare to continue battling. It immediately fled into the distance, and it even used its blood-burning mystic technique to escape. A bloody gash appeared on the Celestial Thearch's palm, but he didn't appear to be very nervous. Instead, He gave chase with a mocking expression. Emperor Beixing is using a secret technique to escape. As a super mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, the Celestial Arch would be able to catch up to them with any random acceleration mystic technique. Of course, it was impossible to kill Emperor Beixing in a short time, but he could keep Emperor Beixing occupied. One terrifying restrictive spell technique after another appeared, and Emperor Beixing was in a lot of pain. Meanwhile, on the battlefield outside Nanchao City, under the leadership of several dozen return to void stage mighty figures, 3 million cultivators had annihilated the remaining heavenly human tribe united army of over 10 million, leaving no survivors. 20 million bodies lay on the ravaged ground, and anyone who looked at the scene would be struck by a sense of shock. This was one of the most brutal battles ever fought between the heavenly human tribe and the human tribe. Sister Lan Yin of the Vermilion Bird sect supported Mo Hai, who was on the verge of fainting from exhaustion. She looked at the corpses strewn all over the ground with a slightly dazed expression. Never in her wildest dreams would she have thought that such a scene would appear before her eyes an hour ago. Most of the corpses on the ground were the bodies of their enemies. As for the enemies who were still standing, there was not a single one. We've won. We've finally won. Some of the cultivators half knelt to the ground, and they couldn't help but wipe tears from their eyes. Some of the cultivators recited the names of their fallen comrades with expressions of relief on their faces. Some of them knelt to the ground and kowtowed heavily a few times toward the fallen Xiaoguang city. He had 1,000 words to say, and all of them were on his knees. In the eyes of the 3 million cultivators, this battle was over. However, it was actually far from over, as there were still 2 Tao integration stage super mighty figures alive. A battle between Tao integration stage super mighty figures was no longer something that they could intervene in. They could only look up into the sky with anticipation in their eyes. Yi Ding was currently in an extremely tragic situation. He was being bashed by 4 Tao integration stage super mighty figures, namely Su Xiaolan, the Phoenix, Zhu Shuza, and Sidu Feng. The Starfire battleship stood off to the side to join in on the fun, occasionally blasting a few cannon blasts to liven things up. If it weren't for the fact that Blood Tribe mighty figures possessed extremely powerful life forces, he would have died many times already. Don't go too far. Yi Ding let loose a roar of despair. Su Xiaolan chuckled coldly before stabbing her dragon sparrow sword into his waist again. Ah! Emperor Yi Ding let loose an enraged roar as a crimson power of the divine Tao soared into the sky. Situ Feng's holy flames enshrouded her body, and she slapped a hand through the air, instantly dispelling Emperor Yi Ding's power of the divine Tao. Zhu Shuza followed up with a punch aimed at Emperor Yi Ding's head, and his head was almost blasted apart. Emperor Yi Ding's eyes glowed with a crimson light. The more wounded he was, the more powerful his aura became. This was a special characteristic of the Rakshasa blood Tao, but he was already on the verge of losing control. Su Xiaolan knew that when Yi Ding completely lost control, he would transform into the infernal Rakshasa. In that state, he would be unable to differentiate between friend and foe, but he would possess power superior to that of Empress Helen and Emperor Meng. At a time like this, it was no longer a good thing for him to be unable to differentiate between friend and foe. This was because everyone around him was Emperor Yi Ding's enemy. If he went berserk, then everyone would be his enemy, so he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. What was surprising Su Xiaolan was that Yi Ding was on the verge of going berserk on several occasions, but he forcibly repressed his rage. Even Su Xiaolan was feeling bad for him, and it looked like he was about to explode. Finally, something unexpected happened. "I'll blow you all up." Emperor Yi Ding suddenly let loose an almighty roar, and his entire body swelled as the power of his blood rapidly converged before exploding with a resounding boom. Su Xiaolan, the Phoenix, Zhu Shuza, and Sidu Feng were all knocked back by the explosion of energy. Right at this moment, a clattering sound erupted in the air. Emperor Yi Ding galloped into the distance on his flaming crimson horse, covering a distance of over 50 kilometers with each stride. Chapter 1514. Emperor Yi Deng has escaped on his horse. Emperor Yi Deng is riding a horse? Hurry! Stop him! Su Xiaolan, Zhu Shuza, and Situ Feng's expressions shifted at the same time, and they all unleashed their respective divine techniques in pursuit. Emperor Yi Deng chortled with glee. So what if you have 4 Dao integration stage, super mighty figures surrounding me? I don't care. You guys can't run as fast as my horse. He looked behind him with a sneer on his flaming crimson horse. The flaming crimson horse was extremely fast, and it was like a red shooting star streaking through the sky. However, the cry of a phoenix suddenly erupted into the heavens. The phoenix spread its wings and followed Emperor Yi Deng at an extremely fast speed. Su Xiaolan stood on the phoenix's back with killing intent radiating from her body. She slowly drew her dragon sparrow sword, which glinted with a frosty light. Emperor Yi Deng's expression shifted drastically. What? This is an escape divine tool that I refined with a supreme-grade horse soul and a star blood core for 9,000 years. But it's still slower than a phoenix? The distance between the two of them drew closer and closer, and a sense of impending doom engulfed his entire body. Emperor Yi Deng no longer hesitated, and a decisive expression appeared on his face as he made an important decision. Burn, my fair Ghana divine horse. Sacrifice the last of your life, and unleash your most dazzling horse life to become the fastest horse in the world. Emperor Yi Deng carved a small spell formation onto the head of the galloping horse. The fair Ghana divine horse suddenly let out a wail of anguish. Howl, howl, howl. The flames on its body became even more intense, and a series of red vein patterns appeared on its body. They were like blood vessels, and there was energy flowing rapidly within them, as if they were squeezing out all of its latent potential. At this moment, the Fergana divine horse also suddenly erupted with an incredible speed. Whoosh! It was even faster than a shooting star, and it instantly disappeared into the distance like a bolt of red lightning. The phoenix let out a cry of surprise and flapped its wings relentlessly. Each flap of its wings covered a distance of several hundred kilometers in an attempt to catch up to the horse. However, it could only look on as the horse disappeared further and further into the distance. Forget it, little Huang. Stop chasing them. Su Xiaolan tried to dissuade the phoenix. The phoenix had already expended a lot of energy in the previous battle. If it continued to chase like this, it might die of exhaustion before it could catch up to the horse. At this time, Zhu Shuza and Situ Feng rushed over. Xiaolan, did you lose him? Zhu Shuza asked, a little unwilling. Su Xiaolan nodded lightly. Emperor Yi Deng sacrificed his divine tool for escape in exchange for unparalleled speed. My phoenix couldn't catch up to his horse. The corners of their mouths twitched when they heard that their phoenixes couldn't catch up to their opponent's horse. However, when they came back to their senses, they remembered that the other party's horse was a divine artifact after all. Moreover, it had been directly sacrificed at the cost of self-detonating a divine artifact in order to obtain this kind of escape speed. They felt a little relieved. Doubt integration stage, super mighty figures are the most important factors in this battle. Empress Helen is dead, and Emperor Yi Deng has escaped. Hopefully, the Celestial Arch will be able to subdue Emperor Beixing next. Zhu Shuza spoke with an expectant expression. He had expended a lot of energy when facing the 8 heavenly human tribe great generals, and he had sustained many injuries as well. As such, he no longer had the energy to participate in a Dao integration stage battle. Of course, in a group fight, he could still act as a facade and scare the other party. Thus, the 3 humans and the phoenix began to fly toward Emperor Beixing. Emperor Beixing was still in the process of fleeing, and the Celestial Arch chased after it while unleashing a barrage of attacks and restraints on it. Just give up. Celestial Arch, what do you do to me like this? Once I get back to the Void Spirit Realm, the realm there will be mine, and you won't be able to do anything to me. You might as well go back and kill Yi Deng. Emperor Beixing said to the Celestial Arch. The Celestial Arch couldn't help but burst into laughter. Emperor Yi Deng is surrounded by 4 Dao integration stage super mighty figures. How is he going to escape? Emperor Bei Xing continued to sell his teammates out. He has the Fergana divine horse, so if we force him to use that treasure, those 4 might not be able to stop him. Oh, is that so? The celestial Arch nodded, and his expression remained unchanged. But I still feel like we should kill you first. You're more dangerous than Yi Deng. I'm just a little star. Why you have to kill a little star? Emperor Bei Xing retracted all of the spikes on its body to reveal a round body that was shimmering with starlight, and it appeared to be completely harmless. The celestial Arch chuckled coldly before unleashing another palm. Bam! Emperor Bei Xing's body crumbled, but it borrowed the power of the celestial Thearcha's palm to flee into the distance at an even faster speed. You want to run? The celestial Arch chuckled coldly as he made an imperial seal with both hands, then made another imperial seal with the opposite hand, upon which peculiar ripples began to surge through heaven and earth. A burst of mighty power encompassed a radius of over 500 kilometers, changing space and direction. Heaven and earth reversal. Whoosh! Emperor Bei Xing was enshrouded by a burst of power, and it felt as if everything had changed. When it came to its senses again, it discovered that it had swapped places with the celestial Arch. Holy F***CK. It cursed as it immediately changed directions. However, the celestial Arch had already taken advantage of this opportunity to strike. He stabbed a finger toward Emperor Bei Xing's body, and a white light pierced through space before puncturing a massive hole into Emperor Bei Xing's body. Howl. Wah! Emperor Bei Xing sobbed loudly, as if it was in a lot of pain. Its body was very strange. It was injured, but it didn't bleed. Instead, it was like a balloon with energy escaping from its body. The celestial Arch immediately turned his power to defend himself upon seeing Emperor Bei Xing's sobs. Emperor Bei Xing's sobs were extremely terrifying, and the power imbued within its voice was enough to make someone cry themselves to death. It was said that the more painful an injured one was, the more anguished they would be. The more anguished they were, the more powerful their cries would be. Emperor Bei Xing's body was punctured, and it sobbed as it fled. Right at this moment, it was suddenly struck by an extremely strong sense of diarrhea. What the hell was this diarrhea? It didn't even have a butt, so how could it be experiencing diarrhea? Following that, an even more terrifying thing happened. The hole that Celestial Arch had made in its body actually had energy gushing out from the hole, gushing out for 1,000 miles. Emperor Bei Xing screamed in horror. The energy within its body was suddenly draining away at a crazy rate. How terrifying was that? This wasn't the end. Emperor Bei Xing didn't even have a chance to recover before boundless grief surged through its body like a river. Wah! Emperor Bei Xing was already a crybaby, and it suddenly began to sob with heart-wrenching sobs. The celestial Arch was quite close to it, and he was blasted flying by the terrifying sound energy. What a powerful power of grief! The celestial Arch was astonished. How did Emperor Bei Xing suddenly become so powerful? Right at this moment, a white figure rapidly approached from the distance. An awkward expression appeared on Enlin's face, but there was a shimmering black divine seal in his hand. Don't even think of running. Eat this. Seal the heavens. Chapter 15:15. The Sky Sealing Technique was the core spell technique of the Sky Sealing Dark King. The number 1 demon of the Kingdom of the Nine States had relied on this technique to contend with the Celestial Court and shake the entire continent. The power of the Sky Sealing Dark King's inheritance crystal required a return to Void Stage mighty figure to endure. Enlin had inherited the power of the Sky Sealing Dark King at the return to Void Stage, and he had attained the core Sky Sealing technique in the strange space created by the heavenly time god. A black divine seal floated forth from his palm before flying into the sky above Emperor Bei Xing's head, where it shattered into a cloud of black mist, as if it were a dark cloud hanging in the sky. Heaven and earth suddenly fell silent in that instant. Whoosh! The crisp sound of something being torn apart sounded. Black chains shot out from the black mist and fell to the ground, piercing into the ground like nails. It was like a huge net, but also like an airtight cage. The celestial Thearcha's eyelids twitched upon seeing these chains, and he turned toward Enlin again. He opened his mouth, as if he had countless words to say, but he swallowed them in the end. Emperor Beixing was not going to just sit and wait for death. Its body shrank to over 100 times its original size before flying toward the gaps between the chains like a shooting star. However, right at this moment, a layer of murky black mist suddenly appeared between the gaps between the chains. Emperor Beixing's body crashed into the black mist, and it let loose a wail of anguish as if it had come into contact with something extremely terrifying, and its round body hurriedly retreated. Enlin gripped the air with one hand. Sky sealing technique. Whoosh! All of a sudden, the light within the space enshrouded by the chains disappeared, and the sense of space vanished. Everyone felt as if they had been transported into a chaotic space with nothing in it. At this moment, Enlin pressed downward toward Emperor Beixing. Get down here. Rumble. Boundless power suddenly swept toward Emperor Beixing, flattening it into the ground. Ow, ow! Emperor Beixing howled with anguish as its grief erupted like a torrent. Enlin's expression remained unchanged as he continued to crush Emperor Beixing. An invisible layer of power enshrouded his entire body, keeping his opponent's weeping tempest at bay. In this space, he was the strongest existence. Even the heavens weren't as strong as him. This was the sky-sealing Dark King's most terrifying spell technique. It could isolate all light, vital energy, and space. It could seal off the authority of the heavens and create an environment where the ruler of primal chaos ruled. Only then did Emperor Beixing turn toward Enlin with astonishment on his face. He clearly didn't think that Enlin would still be able to unleash such astonishing power after killing Helen. The spikes on its body elongated as it spoke in a cold voice. Enlin of the 4-9 Immortal Sect? You haunting thing, quickly release me, or else I'll sacrifice my life to curse you. In the face of Emperor Beixing's threat, Enlin merely chuckled coldly before increasing his pressure. At this moment, the Celestial the Arch was also rushing toward him, clearly intending to cooperate with Enlin. Emperor Beixing was not going to give the two of them a chance to surround it. Its body squirmed, and the wooden skeleton sculpture appeared above its head again. When the skeleton appeared, Enlin felt a sharp pain shoot through his hands from afar. Within this heaven-sealing space, vital energy had already been depleted, so Emperor Beixing was unable to use vital energy. The only thing it could use was its own power, the power of the Divine Tao. Emperor Beixing's power of the Divine Tao surged into the heaven-splitting skeleton's body in a frenzy, but was like a deflated balloon that was becoming more and more feeble. Are you going to stake everything on this one attack? Enlin's expression darkened. Emperor Beixing gritted its teeth with an enraged expression. So what if you can seal the sky? I'm going to break open your heaven-sealing space today. As soon as its voice fell, the wooden skeleton sculpture began to move on its own again. Its eyes turned crimson, and it gripped the air with one of its hands. An extremely sharp blade projection sliced through heaven and earth, and the anguished wails of countless ghosts transformed into substantial power that converged on the blade projection. Anguish could be transformed into power that could affect all living beings in this world. When this power was unleashed to the extreme, even heaven and earth would tremble in response. Heaven-splitting technique. The wooden skeleton sculpture waved the blade projection in its hand, and an extremely sharp red light soared into the sky before clashing with the inky black chains in the sky. The chains screeched and whimpered. A cracking sound then erupted as the sky was shattered, and light from the outside world fell upon the earth. The inky black sky was pulverized by the red blade projection. Enlin suffered spell technique backlash, and blood trickled from the corners of his lips as if he had been severely wounded. Emperor Beixing chortled with glee as its round body soared into the sky. However, the Celestial Arch had already appeared in its path, and the light of his imperial seal enshrouded his hand. No! Emperor Beijing instantly howled with grief. Slap! Its massive body was slammed into the ground by the celestial arch in an extremely violent manner. Boom! The earth tremored violently. Emperor Beijing created a massive crater in the ground. It panted heavily, and its body became insubstantial and on the brink of collapse. Its aura was also extremely feeble. It had expended the vast majority of its energy in the previous battles, and it was now at the end of its tether. Emperor Beijing knew that it was truly in dire straits this time. If the Celestial Arch was pursuing it on his own, then it would still have a chance to escape. However, now that Enlin had expended so much of its energy, its chances of survival were becoming extremely slim. With this in mind, its resentment toward Enlin became more and more substantial. Enlin seemed to have sensed its killing intent, and a faint smile appeared on his face as he flipped his middle finger at it. Trash! Come and hit me if you want to. Emperor Beijing let loose a menacing cry before pouncing toward Enlin at an extremely terrifying speed. It didn't want to run anymore, as it knew that it was going to be exhausted to death no matter how hard it tried. Instead, it had a plan in mind. Enlin had unleashed his heaven-sealing technique, but it had been broken, so its energy had been completely depleted. If it could capture Enlin alive and use Enlin as a hostage, then the Celestial Arch definitely wouldn't dare to do anything to it. That was the only way to survive. Become my sole slave. 1,000 merciless hands. Emperor Beijing chortled with tears in its eyes. All of a sudden, over 10,000 black hands reached toward Enlin like sinister venomous snakes. Each and every one of those hands was imbued with extremely rich power of the divine Tao, which could corrupt all things. However, Enlin was not panicked in the slightest in the face of Emperor Beijing's sudden attack. Instead, a peculiar smile appeared on his face. A completely gray stone with an extremely irregular shape floated in front of him. Countless merciless hands reached toward Enlin. However, a colorful barrier instantly appeared before Enlin. Boom, boom, boom. Violent clashes instantly erupted. However, the colorful barrier didn't even tremble in the slightest. How? How is this possible? Emperor Beijing was in complete disbelief. It had unleashed a spell technique with all its might, but it couldn't even budge a single barrier. Go! Enlin waved a hand, and the small gray rock suddenly erupted with a divine light that struck fear into Emperor Beijing's heart. It tore through all of the black hands before crashing violently toward its body, blasting another massive hole into its body. Chapter 15:16. No! Wah! Emperor Beijing began to wail with anguish. The small stone punctured its body, and the rainbow divine light continued to wreak havoc upon its body. Emperor Beijing tumbled to the ground. The small stone flew back into Enlin's palm in an extremely agile manner. This was none other than the heavenly stone that Nuwa had given him 100 years ago. The stone was imbued with Nuwa's chaotic power, and not only could it easily defend against Tao integration stage attacks, it could also deliver extremely lethal attacks to its enemies. It could be said that it was an offensive and defensive treasure. The only downside was that it could only be used 10 times. He had used it once for defense and once for offense, so there were only 8 left. Enlin stowed the heavenly stone away with a pained expression before turning to Emperor Beijing, who was wailing incessantly on the ground. He activated his Fire God mode again and unleashed a barrage of Fire God fists upon it. Emperor Beijing's energy was almost completely depleted, and it had been severely wounded by the heavenly stone after its surprise attack on Enlin had failed. As such, it had no energy left to defend itself against Enlin's relentless attacks. I'll bash you. Ah, wah, wah, I'll bash you to death. Wah, aren't you very bad *SS? Huh, what happened to your bad *SS attitude? Wah, I was wrong. You'll get bashed for being wrong. Boom, boom, boom. Enlin's golden arms bulged with explosive power, and each and every one of his punches was like a divine mountain crashing down upon the earth. Emperor Beijing was hammered relentlessly, and its body became more and more feeble. its consciousness was also on the brink of collapse, and it was in an extremely wretched state. The celestial arch was a little astonished. What a vicious beating. Just how much does Mr. and Lin hate it? As he spoke, he also joined in on the thrashing, attacking Emperor Bei Xing in a frenzy. Emperor Bei Xing howled with anguish. In the distance, phoenixes flew through the air. Su Xiaolan, Zhu Xuze, and Situ Feng arrived just in time to witness Lin and the celestial arch bashing Emperor Bei Xing, and they were also extremely astonished. A void spirit tribe, Dao, integration, stage, super mighty figure has been reduced to such a sorry state? Situ Feng exclaimed. What a beautiful scream. Zhu Xuze narrowed his eyes and couldn't help but smile. He was extremely hostile toward the void spirit tribe, and he was extremely elated to see their Dao, integration stage mighty figure in such a pitiful state. How could Lin hit him so ruthlessly? Su Xiaolan frowned and reproached him. Zhu Xuze looked at Su Xiaolan in surprise. If Lin had killed Emperor Bei Xing before I got here, then I wouldn't have been able to beat up Emperor Bei Xing. Su Xiaolan harumphed with rage. Zhu Xuze, Situ Feng. Thus, the three humans and the phoenix joined Emperor Bei Xing's forces. What was it like to be pummeled by 5 Dao integration stage, super mighty figures, and a freakish prodigy who was comparable to a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure? Emperor Bei Xing felt like even a thunderstorm of tears wouldn't be able to express its emotions. His round and smooth body was ravaged into all kinds of shapes. In an instant, he was riddled with thousands of holes. He couldn't even fight back. Just when everyone thought that Emperor Bei Xing was going to be pummeled to death, another turn of events occurred. Lin, I'm going to kill you. Emperor Bei Xing suddenly let loose an almighty roar upon seeing this. A hole suddenly appeared in the center of its body. An inky black divine light shot forth toward Lin at an extremely terrifying speed. This divine light was imbued with the last of Emperor Bei Xing's power of the divine Dao, and all things fell silent in its wake. The earth within a radius of several hundred kilometers instantly decayed as all living beings perished. Lin unleashed his evading turtle technique without any hesitation. However, when the divine light struck the turtle shell, it transformed into a peculiar form that transcended beyond matter and was connected to the great Tao of heaven and earth. This was the power of karma. Lin could see that the divine light was a manifestation of an extremely vast amount of emotions. It was like a small star, but it was powerful enough to interfere with all things in this world. Its fate had been determined from the moment it was born. Its fate was to fuse into Lin's body. The small star pierced through Lin's turtle shell and struck his body before disappearing. Lin, Su Xiaolan yelled in a panicked voice. I'm fine. Lin clutched at the spot where he had been struck with a confused expression. He could sense that there was something within his body, but he didn't know what that thing wanted to do. Wah! Ha ha ha! Emperor Bei Xing was laughing and crying at the same time, and its voice was filled with ferocity. Lin, you've been struck by my star of tragedy, which is the most powerful karma spell technique I've unleashed after sacrificing my life force. Once you're struck by this spell technique, your life is destined to end in tragedy. I curse you. I curse you to die a tragic death within 2 hours. Emperor Bei Xing chortled with glee. It's worth it to be able to drag someone down with me before I die. Soon, Lin's heart rate began to accelerate, and his face began to turn blue with exhaustion. What's wrong, Lin? Su Xiaolan couldn't be bothered to beat up Emperor Bei Xing anymore. Instead, she rushed toward Lin and released her divine sense into his body to carefully assess his injuries. However, what was strange to her was that Lin's body appeared to be completely unscathed and completely unscathed. It was also at this moment that she discovered that Lin's power was quickly fading away. At the same time, all of the tissues in his body were quickly crumbling. His structure was in disorder, his cells were dividing incorrectly, and even his consciousness was becoming unstable. All of this pointed toward the worst-case scenario. Lin's body was in for a tragedy. Emperor Bei Xing chortled with glee. Ha! Give up on struggling. My star of tragedy is a karma attack unleashed by the most vicious curse of my life. Even the Celestial the Arch won't be able to break this spell technique in a short time. There's no saving you. Su Xiaolan was given a fright by Emperor Bei Xing's desperate retaliation, and her features paled slightly as she turned toward the Celestial the Arch with a pleading expression. What do I do? The Celestial the Arch took a deep breath before turning toward Emperor Bei Xing. Release your spell technique, and I swear on my name as the Celestial the Arch to spare your life. Emperor Bei Xing's body trembled slightly, and it seemed to be smiling. Why didn't you do that from the beginning? However, right at this moment, and Lin suddenly interjected, there's no need for that. I can take care of it. As soon as he said that, everyone was stunned. Emperor Bei Xing flew into a thunderous rage, and his entire body bulged with rage. You can take care of it? How are you going to do it? Don't overestimate yourself. And Lin ignored Emperor Bei Xing as his evil-slaying sword flew into his hand. It's very simple. I'll just stab myself. Emperor Bei Xing. Everyone, you'd rather commit suicide than let me go? What kind of vendetta do you have against me? Emperor Bei Xing was given a fright as he stared at Enlin with astonishment etched on his face. Enlin raised his evil-slaying sword high into the air, and the sunlight fell upon the blade of the sword. The inky black blade of the sword suddenly turned white, as if it were made of snow and jade, glittering and translucent, pure and flawless, as if it were the most perfect object in this world. Everyone was momentarily entranced by the evil-slaying sword. It was also at this moment that Enlin stabbed the evil-slaying sword into his own body